A little bit fresher elsewhere, but still relatively warm across the east coast of Scotland, where it should stay dry through much of the day. Temperatures around 20 degrees or the high teens across the east. Further west, though, where we've got the heavier rain, potentially some quite thundery downpours, it will be cooler. We'll turn a little bit drier overnight across parts of Northern Ireland and into Wales and the southwest as this band of cloud slowly sinks further south and east into more central and eastern areas of England. So that brings a risk of the odd shower across eastern England, eastern coast of Northern England, the east coast of Scotland this evening, but then things will turn more widely dry overnight tonight. We could see a few mist and fog patches developing across some southern counties and a few further showers spreading into the far north and west. But with clear and dry skies for most of us, it's going to be a cooler night tonight than last night. Quite widely, temperatures dipping down into single figures rurally. So a fresh but bright start to the day on Thursday. Quite a lot of sunshine around on Thursday. It will be a fresher feeling day through much of the day, but still pretty warm in the sunshine, particularly across more southern areas where we're away from the breeze, as there will be a few showers still affecting the west and northern areas of Scotland. And here temperatures a little below average, elsewhere just above. See you soon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. Time is ticking. Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Wednesday, the 28th of August. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Starmer's European gamble. Sir Keir is in Germany in search of a new treaty. The Prime Minister insists the country is turning a corner on Brexit, but what exactly does he mean by a closer relationship with the European Union?
Well, fewer than 100 male prison spaces left. Slaps on the wrist for serious offences. Police accused of giving up on shoplifting. Our Home Secretary is considering increasing the policing of non-crime hate incidents. Is this the right priority?
Starmer says he's agreed a joint action plan with Germany to tackle illegal migration. Yet today, the 20,000th migrant has crossed the English Channel in just this year.
And a different kind of teaching for you. We'll be joined by the founder of Empathy Studios, a company pushing to teach kindness and boost positive behaviour in school children. But should that all be left to the parents?
And we're going to be looking at another issue today as well. That is the law, order, crime and policing, particularly of a specific case of misogynistic abuse.
Yes, this is actually quite shocking. So, a man who assaulted three Asian women, at a petrol station in broad daylight for not wearing appropriate clothing, in his opinion. He essentially beat them up. And what happens? He goes to court. And what's his punishment? A £500 fine, some rehabilitation sessions, and a bit of unpaid work. Now, the government have spoken about extreme misogyny, making extreme misogyny almost treated in the same way as terrorism, as a terror ideology. Surely this is the clearest cut case of extreme misogyny you can have, but it speaks to our criminal justice system.
It does. It's extraordinary that this man thinks he can walk up to three women, all in Bradford, three women he doesn't know, and say that they're not wearing appropriate religious clothing, that they shouldn't be wearing makeup, frankly, that they should be living sort of separate, unassimilated lives, and proceeds to smash one of their faces into a car dashboards, punch and slap and manhandle the rest of them, but no prison time. I mean, is this the state of our criminal justice system?
Well, it makes me furious. Let us know your thoughts on everything we're discussing today. gbnews.com/your say. But let's get the headlines with Sophia.
Emily, Tom, thank you. Good afternoon from the GB newsroom. It's just gone 12 o'clock. Your headlines. The Prime Minister has been holding a joint news conference with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin after pledging to reset relations with the EU. Sir Keir Starmer is in Germany to launch negotiations on a new bilateral treaty which hopes to boost business and increase joint action on illegal migration. The Prime Minister is on a two-day trip to Berlin and Paris to turn a corner on Brexit and fix the broken relationships left behind by the previous government. Speaking earlier, Sir Keir Starmer described it as a moment of opportunity to deepen links between the UK and Germany.
This treaty is part of a wider reset, grounded in a new spirit of cooperation, with our shared understanding that this will be developed at pace and that we hope to have agreed it by the end of the year. A Britain reconnected, resetting our relationship, rediscovering our common interests, delivering for working people. Britain and Germany already have an incredible relationship. Two great countries brought closer together than ever before, the strongest strategic partners in Europe and on the world stage.
Meanwhile, back in the UK, the Chancellor has addressed Sir Keir Starmer's warning that the autumn budget will be painful. Speaking a short while ago in Scotland, Rachel Reeves defended the government's decision on winter fuel payments.
The truth is that these are not decisions that I wanted to make, but these are decisions we had to make, given the inheritance that we faced from the Conservative government. And there'll be more difficult decisions to come in the budget later this year. is the stark reality after the mess that the previous Conservative government have left this Labour government to inherit. It means difficult decisions, but without difficult decisions, we're going to face serious problems with our public finances. I will not take the risks that the Conservatives have taken previously that would put our economy in danger.
Chancellor Rachel Reeves speaking there. Now, there are just 100 spaces left in male prisons across England and Wales. That's according to the Ministry of Justice. With reports, this is the closest the system has come to running out of places. It comes after the activation of Early Dawn, where defendants in active court cases are kept in police cells until standard prison spaces open up. Now, with hundreds more arrests from riots and Notting Hill Carnival disorder over recent days and weeks, there are concerns prisons may run out of capacity. Shadow Leader of the House of Commons, Chris Philp, has called for more spaces.
During last year, every week there were about 100 additional prison places were created by the previous Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk. So they were bringing on 100 more places each week than were being retired or withdrawn for refurbishment. So I think the solution to this is more prison places, and in the very short term, these rapid deployment cells, RDCs, are what I would like to see being used.
Now, some breaking news in the last half hour. 2 British crew members of the super yacht that sank off Sicily last week have been placed under investigation by the local prosecutor's office. 7 people were killed when the Bayesian sank, with owner British tech tycoon Mike Lynch and his 18-year-old daughter Hannah amongst those who died. Both Mr. Parker Eaton and Matthew Griffith, the lookout crew members on duty during the sinking, have now been placed under investigation. In other news, the Israeli military has launched a major operation in the West Bank. Palestinian health officials claim at least 9 people have been killed in the strikes. The Israeli army confirmed today that they had begun what they said was an operation to counter terrorism in Yenin and Tulkarm. A man has been charged with attempted murder over the stabbing of a mother at Notting Hill Carnival. 20-year-old Shaquille Thibu will appear in court charged with the attempted murder of the 32-year-old woman who was attacked while with her young child. 2 other men have been charged in relation to the same incident. The 3 men are brothers. And in the US, former President Donald Trump has been hit with new charges for his alleged attempts to interfere in the 2020 election. It comes after the US Supreme Court ruling last month that former presidents are presumptively immune from prosecution for official White House acts. Donald Trump has responded to the new indictment filed against him, describing it as an effort to resurrect a dead witch hunt. Meanwhile, the former US president has spoken about his assassination attempt, saying God protected him during the campaign rally in Pennsylvania.
It has to be God. I mean, how can you say it's luck when it's, 20 million to 1, okay? I mean, it's just not possible that I was in that position. It's the only position where that bullet could have missed.
And you believe in God?
I do.
You believe God's hand was in this that day?
I believe so, yeah, I do.
Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in half an hour.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 8 minutes past 12. Now, the Prime Minister is meeting Olaf Scholz in Berlin today as he seeks an ambitious new treaty with Germany, a move that is part of his wider push to reset relations with Europe post-Brexit.
Yes, so appearing at a press conference alongside the German Chancellor, the Prime Minister said the new agreement between Britain and Germany would seek to boost trade and increase cooperation on issues such as defence, tackling illegal migration and climate change. He also added that both sides hope to conclude the new treaty by the end of the year.
Let's discuss this now with our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Because, Catherine, there'll be many people who hear the idea of a new European treaty and start to think, hang on, didn't we just leave?
Yes, good afternoon, Tom and Emily. Yes, indeed. And of course, our new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, previously campaigned for a second referendum, but has been very clear for a long time that Brexit has happened and that we are not going back. So he said categorically, and still says, not going back into the EU, not going back into the customs union or the single market. But he does want a much closer relationship with our friends in Europe, and he's setting out to get that. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind, hasn't it? Yesterday, he was in the Rose Garden at Downing Street talking about painful choices. Today, he is in Germany with Chancellor Scholz. We've just had the press conference. They've met 5 times now since he became Prime Minister. They clearly have a lot in common. They get on well. And then after this, he's going to be heading to France for the Paralympics opening ceremony, and then tomorrow he will be meeting Emmanuel Macron. And clearly, you know, he's saying they're aiming to get this new treaty done and dusted potentially by the end of the year, talking about stronger cooperation on defence, on security, on illegal migration. We didn't hear anything about that yesterday, did we? But talking about that today, particularly in regards, of course, to those terrible terrorist attacks last week in Germany. They said today in the press conference that they have discussed and agreed a joint action plan to strengthen cooperation to tackle illegal migration. They also want to work more closely on trade. I think that's going to be much trickier. Of course, Sir Keir Starmer wants growth, and he thinks if he can boost our trading relations with Germany, that will help. But of course, Germany is still part of the European Union, so they're very limited in what they can do on that. So a lot of warm words, but not much detail and a lot of questions. We know that Germany would like a youth mobility scheme. Sir Keir Starmer said again, there's no plans for that. But frankly, you know, we want something. What are we going to have to give in return?
Well, exactly. There is a question around whether you can have really a meaningful bilateral agreement with an EU nation state, because of course it must come with strings attached. Germany are part of the customs union, they are part of the single market, they can't deal with only their national sovereignty, I suppose. So it's going to be very tricky. It will require give and take if he wants something actually meaningful, surely.
Yes, I think it's going to be very difficult in terms of trade. Now, sure, David Cameron did a deal back in 2010 with France, a 50-year agreement. It was called the Lancaster Treaties, but that was around defence and security specifically. Now, yes, the Prime Minister wants to be working on that, but he is also very much focused on growth. He said it's his #1 priority. They do want this to include, deals with... It's not going to be a trade deal, clearly, but I think that sort of thing is very problematic, and we will have to give something to get something back. And Germany can't agree very much in that respect because they are members of the European Union. So I think there's a lot of questions around that we simply don't have answers to at the moment.
Well, Catherine Forster, thank you very much for that overview. Interesting times ahead. Let's get the thoughts now of Sir Nick Harvey. He's the CEO of the European Movement in the UK. Sir Nick, thank you for joining us today. I suppose your group, which campaigns for much closer relations with the European Union, will be delighted by what's going on today.
Yes, I think it's a very welcome development. It continues the path that Starmer set out at Blenheim in July when European leaders came to the UK. He said then that he wanted to reset relations. France and Germany are the two biggest and most powerful members of the European Union, and I think it's a very logical next step for him to be going to both of them and talking to them further about how things can progress. We left in 2020, as you've just been saying, But in the years since then, we've been quite unnecessarily negative in our relations with Europe, and the opportunity to put them onto a more positive footing can only be a good thing in a world where we now have the Ukraine war on the European continent. We've got the migration problem that everybody continues to struggle with, and the prospects of sorting some of these things out are far better if we work together than if we're in our own little silos.
Are you hoping that this may be the beginning of a route back into the European Union?
I don't think this is intended to be that, but clearly the continent of Europe has changed quite significantly in the years since we left because of the Ukraine war. And the European Union has essentially been an economic project historically. It's all been about prosperity and building up the single market. But of course, economic success is built on secure foundations, and the security of Europe is now under threat in a way it never has really been since the end of the Second World War. We can't ignore that, and Britain has a part to play in that. It's in our interests and it's in mainland Europe's interest. So I'm not at all surprised to hear the emphasis being put on defence and security during the course of that press conference with Olaf Scholz this morning.
Interesting, though, considering we've already got a defensive alliance that covers most European countries, but also Canada and America and many other countries besides. It's called NATO, and Sweden's just joined it. Finland's just joined it. Indeed, isn't that sort of our umbrella of protection? Why would we want to create a sort of parallel defence union here? Isn't that just undermining what is the most successful military alliance in the world?
No, absolutely not. You're quite right that NATO remains the framework within which our security is achieved and is guaranteed. But you can hear voices from America, and it's not only Donald Trump, saying that Europe needs to do far more on its own account to take responsibility for its own security. This is entirely within NATO, but pulling more weight within NATO. Europe collectively spends a lot on defence, has quite substantial defence forces, but because they're all done on a national basis, we don't really the punch that we should. So closer relations with Europe and talking to the bigger countries in the first instance is a very logical, very sensible way
I don't think that's
to ensure that we look
with all
after
due respect,
ourselves.
I don't think that's necessarily true. You're saying that the only problem in Europe is that there's not one army and the spending is exactly the same as the United States. I mean, that's nonsense. The spending is far lower than the United States. It's the spending that's the problem, not the fact that there isn't one European army.
I'm not calling for one European army. I'm talking for closer cooperation between the countries in Europe who agreed they may not spend as much as America, but the continent of Europe is the third biggest spender after America and China. But because it's all rather scattered, it's not really getting the best bang for the buck, if you'll excuse the expression in the military context. So closer cooperation is the way to do it. I'm not talking about a single army. I'm not talking about a rival to NATO. I'm talking about Europe working more closely together to pull its weight inside NATO.
OK, well, thank you very much indeed, Sir Nick Harvey, CEO of European Movement UK. Interesting, some disagreement there. So, Nick, when he says that it's always been about just the economy, from its start it wasn't only about economics. There was always an idea of this sort of glossy federalism where we'd all become one Europe.
Jean-Charles Mollet,
from the start, right from the beginning. Right from the beginning.
Yeah, European partners, a European dream. But it is interesting, though. Is this the new sort of tactic from those that sort of want the United Kingdom to return to the European fold? Just sort of an incremental step-by-step. Oh, no, we're not going to do the whole thing now. No. We wouldn't possibly dream of a European army. We wouldn't possibly dream of rejoining the customs union or the single market. We'll just take a little step towards it.
Yeah, I mean,
and then maybe in a year we'll take a little further step towards it.
How can you have proper European defence cooperation without actually joining up your armed forces? Anyway, should we bring you some more on our breaking exclusive today? More than 20,000 migrants have now crossed the English Channel illegally so far this year.
Well, the grim milestone was reached this morning as hundreds more made the journey in small boats from France. And to break this down is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What can you tell us? Have we reached that mark, that milestone?
Yes, indeed we have. We had reached 19,820 odd yesterday when 526 people crossed the channel in 8 small boats, but we're on course to surpass that number today. Our producer down in Kent tells us at least 11 small boats are in the English Channel. A couple have made it to be picked up by Border Force and returned to the Migrant Processing Centre at Dover Harbour. Others being picked up as we speak. And it looks like at least 650 will have crossed today. That will take the total beyond 20,000 to 20,000, almost 20,500 for the year so far. And don't forget, we are now in the busiest period of the year when, for the most part, it's flat calm conditions and hundreds arrive every single day, which is exactly what we've seen the last couple of days. Flat calm conditions, lots of people coming across. The government has actually been spared a little embarrassment in terms of it's been over a week of bad, unseasonably bad weather in the Channel, or we would have passed 20,000 more than a week ago. But now things have calmed down again. We're on course to rocket up, and I've been speaking to sources who say, without a doubt, we will easily surpass the 29,000 who crossed for the whole of last year.
Will this be the largest year of crossings on record, or can we not be certain of that yet?
I think that would take a lot of doing, because the record year was over 45,000 who crossed the year before last, and there were lots of days of flat calm conditions there that allowed many people to cross during that year. So we're going to be well north of 29,000, so well into 30,000 something. We might even top 40,000, but we just don't know. I mean, the weather can be unpredictable, but we know we're in that period of the summer when it tends to be fairly good weather conditions.
Absolutely, and you've said for months how it's the weather that's the key factor in determining the numbers. So Starmer's in Germany today, the Prime Minister. He has apparently agreed a joint action plan with Germany to tackle this issue. What might that include?
Well, greater cooperation between the UK and Europe. Clearly, as far as the Prime Minister is concerned, the first thing he did in office was to scrap the previous government's Rwanda deterrent scheme to put many asylum seekers over to Rwanda for processing. He wants to smash the gangs instead. And in Germany, at that news conference, he doubled down on that decision to scrap Rwanda. This is what he said.
I have long said before the election that I thought the Rwanda scheme was a gimmick, which is why we stood it down immediately. But nonetheless, it is very important that we take back control of our borders. I have long been convinced that the best way, the most effective way to do that is to take down the gangs that are running the vile trade of putting people in dangerous situations across Europe and across the Channel. And I said before the election that I would invest political capital in making sure we could work more effectively with our partners in taking down those gangs. And that's why I'm very pleased today that we've had a substantive discussion, agreed to a joint action plan, and that will, as you would expect, deal with issues like data sharing, intelligence sharing, what we can do on joint operations, because that is the way to take effective action in relation to the vile trade that sits beneath irregular migration across Europe, and in particular sits beneath the vile trade of putting people into small boats across the Channel.
There was the Prime Minister using a lot of words to say perhaps not very much. But he used that term there, irregular migration. It seems that this is the new watchword for the government. Have they thrown the word illegal migration out the window?
They've gone back to what the previous government did describe channel crossings as before they passed the illegal migration bill, which deemed anyone crossing by irregular means was actually entering the country illegally, and therefore they should not be entitled, except in very exceptional circumstances, to claim asylum, and they would be deemed an illegal immigrant. But clearly, this government has decided, whatever the law change says, that they're going to go back to just describing it in more placid terms as irregular migration rather than illegal.
So is it going to become inaccurate in the United Kingdom to describe channel migrants as illegal migrants?
Well, I don't think so, because there has been a change of law under the illegal migration bill.
Until they repeal or amend that?
Well, unless what this is indicating is perhaps an intention of the government to repeal that legislation, to return us to the situation the country found before the passage of that landmark bill.
They might do, or they might just decide to ignore it and, continue to refer to it as irregular migration. I'm sure that's probably, rather than go through the Commons again and Parliament again to put this legislation through, I don't think they necessarily need to do it, because they're not asking for any special powers. They're just choosing to ignore the powers that are there.
It's a hugely significant shift in language. If you go from calling someone an illegal migrant to an irregular migrant, well, that would suggest that you should be treating those migrants very differently from how you would if you deemed them illegal.
Well, look, it's not just the change in language. There is, without a doubt, a significant shift in policy in the way in which those who cross from France in these small boats will be dealt with. Before, as I say, under the previous government, you would not be eligible to claim asylum. Now you will be allowed to claim asylum. Not just that, the government is determined to reduce that backlog rapidly. And as we already know, because we've discussed this before, the vast majority of those crossing are from countries where we can never send the people back to because they're deemed unsafe. So they are simply going to be allowed to stay. It's either asylum by name or it's asylum in any other name, because it is leave to remain in the UK.
And Mark, as you've explained, as we speak, 11 boats are in the English Channel with our authorities sat there meekly, just watching them come across, waiting for them to cross that halfway point before we perhaps pick them up and take them to shore. It is such a visceral example of a lack of power, of a lack of authority, of an impotence of this country, and also points to the question I'm sure is on the lips of many of those watching and listening, which is, why on earth do the French not choose to pick up illegal migrants as soon as they get in the water? They have responsibility for half of that channel, and yet they say, not our problem, Gov, as soon as a boat touches that water.
Yes, well, you're right there. As soon as the boat is in the water, the French have taken a decision that then it is too dangerous in their eyes to intervene to push that boat back to shore. So they leave it. They offer to rescue the inhabitants of that boat and to take them on board and return them to France. But every time the migrants, of course, refuse that offer and want to continue on their journey, and only ever accept that offer if they are in serious difficulties, if the boat is floundering, people are in the water, etc. So what you get is the sight of these French vessels effectively escorting the small boats until they get to the halfway point, to that line that separates French waters from UK waters. Once they cross the line, then those migrants are only too happy to be picked up by the UK authorities, because that's their goal, to be taken into UK custody, to go into the asylum system. But the issue around whether anything will change is a long, long way off, because it's going to, although the current government is focused on smashing the gangs, to get the investigatory process beefed up to the extent of going after the criminal gangs, trying to dismantle the criminal gangs, if they can ever achieve that fully, is going to take an awful long time. They're only in the process now of recruiting more investigators. That's going to take time in itself. Then you've got to investigate. And these things are lengthy in duration. You know, they're multi-dimensional over multiple countries, involving serious organised criminals that know how to commit crime and get away with it.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, letting us know what you make of all of that. 20,000 in just 1 year so far.
What an example of the impotence of the British state, of sort of how we see the boats there in the middle of the Channel, and we can't do anything. We don't touch them. We can't do anything. We can't stop the boats. In fact, we bring the boats to us. Could you imagine Britain doing this 100 years ago?
No, I can't. And in more bad news, sorry, there are fewer than 100 spaces now left in men's prisons in the whole of England and Wales. What repercussions will this have on the state of Britain? After your headlines with Sophia.
Emily, thank you. It's 12:30. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has been holding a joint news conference with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin after pledging to reset relations with the EU. Sir Keir Starmer is in Germany to launch negotiations on a new bilateral treaty which hopes to boost business and increase joint action on illegal migration. The Prime Minister is on a 2-day trip to Berlin and Paris to turn a corner on Brexit and fix the broken relationships left behind by the previous government. Speaking moments ago, Sir Keir Starmer described it as a moment of opportunity to deepen links between UK and Germany.
This treaty is part of a wider reset, grounded in a new spirit of cooperation, with our shared understanding that this will be developed at pace and that we hope to have agreed it by the end of the year. A Britain reconnected, resetting our relationship, rediscovering our common interests, delivering for working people. Britain and Germany already have an incredible relationship. Two great countries brought closer together than ever before, the strongest strategic partners in Europe and on the world stage.
Now, to bring you more on that breaking news, GB News can exclusively reveal that more than 20,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally so far this year. The milestone was reached this morning as hundreds more made the journey in small boats from France. It's after 526 people arrived illegally in UK waters in 8 dinghies yesterday. 2 British crew members of the Aviation, the super yacht that sank off Sicily last week, have been placed under investigation by the local prosecutor's office. 7 people were killed when the Aviation sank, with owner British tech tycoon Mike Lynch and his daughter, 18-year-old Hannah, amongst those who died. Both Mr. Parker Eaton and Matthew Griffith, the lookout crew members on duty during the sinking, have been placed under investigation. And the Israeli military has launched a major operation in the West Bank. Palestinian health officials claim at least 9 people have been killed in the strikes. The Israeli army confirmed today that they had begun what they said was an operation to counter terrorism in Yenin and Tulkarm. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 34 now, minutes past 12. And there are fewer than 100 spaces left in men's prisons in England and Wales.
Yes, let that sit. Now, the system, already in the middle of an overcrowding crisis, is understood to be close to breaking point after increased strain over the bank holiday weekend.
Well, on Friday, magistrates were told to delay jailing criminals as the government hopes to make more than 500 spaces available in the coming weeks.
Well, joining us, I know, goodness me, what a state. Joining us now is Sam Bidwell, writer at The Critic and research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. Sam, how did we get here, and just how perilous is the state of our prisons at the moment?
Well, look, thanks both for having me. And I've got to say, this has been coming down the track for a very, very long time. This is no surprise. Successive governments have refused to increase our prison capacity. They've refused to build more prisons. They've refused to look at the amount of sentences we're giving out. And as a result, of course, we're going to end up with an overcrowding crisis. We've got serious issues with crime on the streets. Everybody's aware of this. And yet we haven't seen a corresponding increase in prison capacity. We've not seen any more prisons built over time. It's very difficult, as you know, anybody who's dealt with the British planning system knows, to get big infrastructure through, let alone when it's a prison. You know, who wants a prison?
Just on that,
yeah.
I believe there is at least one prison that is due to open in 2025. Will that be replacing space, or will that be creating additional capacity? Apologies if you don't know exactly which one I'm talking about.
It's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of both. So some of it will come in to replace capacity at prisons which will have to be closed down or renovated in the meantime. Some of it will be brand new capacity. But you know, at the end of the day, this isn't something that can wait until 2025. You know, frankly, what we've seen since that decision on Friday, since that guidance to magistrates on Friday, we've seen a case in which a child rapist was spared prison time because of, you know, explicitly because of this capacities issue. Now, at the same time, what we're seeing is people getting jail time for anti-immigration Facebook memes in the wake of these riots in Southport. So, you know, regardless of how we got here, and frankly, I think governments of both parties bear the blame over a number of decades. The fact is that the government is not responding to this in a sensible way. It isn't taking appropriate or sufficiently radical upfront action. You know, let's say, you know, you look at COVID. We needed additional hospital capacity. We built Nightingale hospitals. You know, put a barge outside, off the coast. We've used the Bibby Stockholm before. We can use it again. There are short-term things we can be doing to supplement our prison capacity. Those are not the steps the government is choosing to take. Instead, the government is talking about making lighter sentences, sentencing fewer people. That is more radical a position than my position, which is simply that we ought to build some emergency capacity. You know, when it really wants to, the state can be very effective. This is an issue of will. This is not an issue of capacity.
10 to 15% of sentences go to foreign criminals. Those who the government would be within their rights to, you'd think, send back to the country they are a citizen of if they're not a British citizen. Yet that doesn't seem to be an avenue that the government chooses to explore in any depth.
Yeah, 10,422. Sorry, 10,422 people of foreign origin. That's 13% of the population of our prisons. That would be an easy fix.
Yeah, you'd think so. You'd think so. As we know, the government has had, on the one hand, has had difficulty in deporting large numbers of people, but actually over the last week or so, we've seen the largest ever deportation in British history. We saw 200 people deported back to Brazil, right? So this is again proof that if the government wants to, it can.
But that's Brazil.
Yes.
I'm sure there will be countries on that list of foreign criminals who the Supreme Court of this country determines as unsafe countries.
Mm-hmm. But hang on, look. The number one is Albania. Number 2 is Poland. Number 3, Romania. 4, Ireland. 5, Jamaica. Those are all safe countries, aren't they?
We certainly have a deal with Albania. I'm surprised that's 1,273 Albanian criminals in British jails. Surely there must be a reason. We can't all... surely there must be a reason why they're not being sent back to Albania.
Well, look, this kind of sensible and straightforward thinking is why I'm not in the Home Office. If you were, you'd be nowhere near it. The fact is that this is low-hanging fruit that we could be choosing to pick. The issue is, as you say, it's this lawfare problem that we've got. The courts will, yes, accept the country is safe in principle, but we'll also point to things like somebody's lifestyle, somebody's politics, as an example as to why they can't get sent back home.
Even if the country is deemed lawful, it might be unsafe to send a specific individual due to specific circumstances.
Exactly, and of course what you have, so let's take the Albanian group that you mentioned there. Many of those individuals will be involved with gang crime. right? Therefore, of course, it's unsafe to send them back home because they're affiliated to a gang that could put them in danger, either from the government or from another gang, and thus it's impossible to send them back.
I mean, Sam, can I just point out one horrific story that we've focused on a little bit today? And it's an example of, clearly, our broken criminal justice system. So a man, Mohammed Hassan, 26, he assaulted 3 Asian women at a petrol station in broad daylight. He called them prostitutes. He said they were dressed inappropriately and essentially grabbed them, punched them, seriously harmed them. £500 fine, suspended sentence, a bit of rehab, a little bit of unpaid work. Job's a good one.
Well, look, if he's on his best behaviour, he won't see a single day in jail, right? That's the fact. And, you know, we talk about foreign crime. We can also talk about the kind of crimes that have emerged because of our failure to integrate particular communities over a long period of time. We've seen a large number of people with very different social and ethical norms come in. I think Mr. Hassan is a Bradford man, but at the end of the day, what we're seeing is really horrific, violent crime. This is not a question of letting somebody off for shoplifting, which, by the way, is practically legal at this point. What we're talking about now is giving people little, few sentences or no sentences, say you must be on your best behaviour, otherwise you'll go to jail. But of course, these criminals know that because as you say, as our prison system is bursting at the seams, there is absolutely no prospect of them seeing jail time, even if they misbehave.
Extraordinary that the government says that this is a crisis, things are getting worse before they get better, and that there isn't this sense of sort of a national push to build the Nightingale prisons, as you mentioned, to sort of expedite extraditions or whatever. It's very strange.
It's a crisis. Behave like there's a crisis.
Yeah.
We've had crises before. We had a crisis during the pandemic. We've had crises in the past many times. And we know that when it really wants to, the British state can actually get its act together. It can work around these judges, these regulators, these civil servants. It can get it done. We saw it with the Vaccines Task Force. It can get it done. We are choosing not to. This is an issue of political will.
Absolutely. And with our Home Secretary talking about treating extreme misogyny as a terror ideology, also talking about, recording more non-hate crime incidents, non-crime hate incidents. I mean, the priorities. Sam Bidwell, thank you very much indeed, writer at The Critic and research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society.
Well, now a new study suggests empathy can be effectively taught in schools, potentially reducing social unrest.
Yes, so through a video-led course, children in several countries, including the United Kingdom, were shown thought-provoking films before engaging in half an hour of activities and discussions about the issues raised.
Well, let's get more of this from the founder of Empathy Studios, the company behind the course, Ed Kerwin. Ed, thanks for joining us. I was sort of led to believe that people have almost slightly immutable character traits that are rather more nature than nurture. Are you saying it's the opposite?
Not saying it's the opposite, but I would say that empathy definitely can be taught. It's something that it can be nurtured just like any other skill. And I think the crucial bit here is that empathy is a skill rather than a trait or an act. And fundamentally, we also think that a lot of people disagree or don't quite know what empathy truly is, which we describe it as the ability to understand another and the ability to, really get into understanding the perspectives, the feelings, but also it's about understanding yourself. And lots of people think about empathy as kindness or helping other people. And of course, those things are linked. But empathy really is about understanding how much better a world would it be if we actually understood each other a little bit more before we acted.
Yeah, it probably would be a nicer place. Are our children lacking in empathy?
Well, we certainly know that we can help improve their empathy. And I think what's difficult now is with the rise of social media and technology, that we have almost these inbuilt algorithms that show us what we want to see, tell us what we want to hear. And ultimately, we close ourselves off from a lot of the perspectives of other people around the world. And as we know, the world is getting more diverse and we're having to zoom in and meet people from other countries in our workplaces. Our neighbourhood diversity has doubled in the UK in the past 20 years from census data. I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think it brings with it experiences that we can learn from. But what we need to do is actually learn, therefore, how to connect with other people. Disagreements shouldn't be seen as arguments. They should be seen as different points of view. And I think what we're trying to do is ultimately show that if you can develop the skill of empathy, which we now have shown you can, and other studies have shown you can as well, we can actually decrease hate online, we can decrease comments online, we can actually improve well-being. increased self-esteem. We all want our children to actually, we talk about happiness and kindness. We actually want our children to go to school, develop a sense of self, and be able to connect with other people. And that's what we're trying to achieve and what we're showing.
So there's this study that has shown that this course works. I mean, how do you test someone's empathy? How do you determine if someone is empathetic or otherwise?
So it's difficult. It's done from like pre and post, and then surveys, as well as students reporting themselves, but mostly done through teacher feedback and surveys, as well as qualitative studies. You're right, it is quite a difficult thing to study, and there's conflicting ways of collecting this data and analysing. But ultimately, what we've done is with Cambridge University, followed a scheme where we take them through this programme, we look at it before, we look at it after, we compare results from those, and have shown that's where we've got the numbers from in terms of improved behaviour. That is teachers reporting that number.
Yeah.
And you're right, it is a difficult thing to do, but everything that's measured is not always important, and everything that is important, it can't always be measured. And what we're doing is showing that you can start to measure this over time. The difficulty is it takes time. And people nowadays want things instantly. They want to know this works after a vitamin works straight away, when actually we know vitamins have to be taken over time. Empathy is a bit similar. It's like a muscle. You go to the gym once, you don't see any difference, but you keep working on things, you eventually start to see the repercussions and the benefits.
I mean, Ed, I guess it's tricky though, because isn't empathy the ability to understand and almost share the feelings of someone else? It's not the same as just being nice, is it? It's not the same as just being kind to someone or tolerant to someone. It's actually something that, unfortunately, people like sociopaths simply don't have.
Yeah, it's the ability to understand another and gain their perspective, but also really distance yourself as well at the times that you need to. So we have a program that's empathy for myself, empathy for others, and empathy in action. That is our framework. And what people lean into with empathy is they always think it's about sharing what other people are doing and feeling, and completely encompassing yourself in that person, and therefore you're connecting. When actually we always start with empathy for myself, which for me is this ability, and for us is this ability to understand your own culture, your own religion, your own background, where you come from, and understand that your worldview is simply only yours. And then you are actually able to connect with someone better, because you might be speaking from someone, for example, from a different religion, and you completely fundamentally disagree with their religion because you think yours is right. But by doing that, you actually are able to hold yourself back, listen to them, understand them better, and you can still leave that conversation knowing that you've connected with that person, even if you disagree with a fundamental part of their life. And
It's a really, really important point, and perhaps would be a great thing for people who are of different political opinions.
Yeah, might be nice.
Doing as well. Ed Kerwin, founder of Empathy Studios, really appreciate your time this afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
I show you a lot of empathy, don't I?
Yeah, and I show you, well, you don't know if I show you empathy. I could just be a sociopath and be very good at faking it.
I didn't say it. I didn't say it. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB. Do you know what? It would be nice if people could just, be a bit tolerant of people who don't agree with them.
It's true, but this is the thing about measuring it, right? It's third parties measuring, does this person seem more empathetic? You don't know if they're being more empathetic.
I think you can fake it as well. You can fake it.
They could just be very good at learning to pretend that they're empathetic.
You can totally fake it.
The same.
Lots more coming up on today's show. Yvette Cooper is reportedly planning to strengthen hate crime laws by encouraging the police to spend more time recording more non-crime hate incidents, something the Conservatives oppose to protect free speech. All of that and more to come. You're with GB News. We're on Britain's news channel.
Where's the
The latest GB News travel.
Southbound on the M42, queue in traffic and a lane closure to an accident at 3A for the M40 interchange, delays at a junction 4. Coastbound on the M20, an earlier broken down vehicle at junction 5 has been removed and traffic has returned back to normal, and that's the same for the coastbound side of the M20, an earlier broken down vehicle cleared from junction 8 for Leeds Castle to Ashford at junction 9. It is looking slow for the M25 through the roadwork area at junction 10 for the Wisley interchange, that's clockwise. On the clockwise side of the M25, it's also looking slow just before junction 23 for South Mims. For both of those, around 20 minutes will be added to your morning travels. Leave extra time for travel is the advice, and that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
An army veteran has become the world's most tattooed woman after a 10-year journey to ink 99.98% of her body. I mean, that's really nearly everywhere. But I wonder, I mean, yes, she is unusual, and you'd know her if you met her, frankly, wouldn't you? But are tattoos acceptable they're becoming more and more acceptable just amongst all of us, aren't they? But what about in the workplace?
99.98% of her body tattooed. Do you think this would affect the way that she is received at work?
I do affect it would how she is seen at work, just purely because tattoos are still so stigmatised in the workplace. In today's rapidly evolving society, the traditional standards of what is socially acceptable are being redefined. Facial tattoos, full body tattoos, once stigmatised, are increasingly seen as a form of personal expression, and there shouldn't be a barrier to one's professional or social life.
If you are going for a job, for instance, we make up 90% of our minds about somebody within the first 3 seconds. And I have written a book on body language, and the face is just so important. You need to have the smile, you need to be able to read the facial expression, even when we're speaking. Now, if the face is really heavily tattooed, you can't do that.
Jade said that there is still this stigma, particularly to facial tattoos. We do judge people with tattoos, don't we?
We do. Unfortunately, we do, because it's not the norm. And as a human being, we tend to judge what is not the norm. And as Jade says, we are getting much more used to it. It is much more socially acceptable. But a lot of firms will say, if you've got a tattoo, you cover it. We don't want tattoos in the workplace.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 12:51, and this is Good Afternoon, Britain.
It is indeed. Now the Home Secretary, she's going to require police to record more non-crime hate incidents. Now this is a reversal of changes made by the Conservatives to protect free speech.
Well, it would reverse those changes introduced last year by former Home Secretary Suella Braverman, which issued new guidance to police that downgraded the duty to monitor these sort of non-criminal hate incidents.
OK, well, joining us is Mo Lavert, programme coordinator at the Academy of Ideas. Mo, thank you very much indeed. These non-crime hate incidents have been a bit controversial, haven't they? I mean, what exactly are they, and should police be spending time recording them?
Yeah, so, I mean, they are concerning. I mean, they are basically thought policing in the most, dire way you can expect, because basically what they are, they're not crimes, but they're deemed to be hateful behaviour that could lead to hostility or escalation into something that is a crime. So basically, in order to kind of understand what that is, in order for that to be recorded, somebody other than the perpetrator, let's call them that for the second, has to deem it to be hateful. So you're essentially trying to establish motive. And when I say you're essentially trying to establish motive, I'm not talking about a judicial process, a court of law, or jury by peers. I'm talking about the person that perceives they've been the victim of hateful conduct, or the police themselves. So it has no judicial process. It is predominantly about what we say, because how else do you decide, somebody is being hateful? But essentially, being hateful is not a crime. It's not nice, but it's not a crime.
I suppose, to play devil's advocate, the idea behind them would be that the police need to keep tabs on people who aren't yet criminals but might turn into criminals. So keeping these files on hateful people in society might be useful, because the most hateful people might then go off to do something illegal later down the line. What do you say to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was thinking about a similar example where you have like community, in the old-fashioned days when we had community policing, and the policemen might know troublemakers on an estate or something like that, and they might keep notes. So you could argue it's similar to that, but it's not really. For a start, there's no context. It's data-driven, so it just becomes without context on a file, and it can be interpreted by somebody else in a completely different way. It's not quite that kind of personalised community policing. But also, Tom, I mean, the thing is, and I think we see this right across the board, something I'm very concerned about is the presumption of innocence is being eroded. The presumption of innocence is there for, it's there for a reason. It's an important democratic right. It stops kind of authoritarian measures by those in authority. And we're seeing this time and time again. So not only is this, a threat to free speech, it is also an erosion of the presumption of innocence.
Yes, and Mo, we've been talking today about the state of our criminal justice system, the lack of spaces in our prisons, soft sentences, shoplifting practically being legal in this country at the moment. There's a shocking story that we're hearing about today about a man in Bradford who essentially beat up 3 women because they weren't wearing what he deemed to be appropriate clothing. And he got away with a £500 fine and a bit of rehab. And then, on the other hand, we see that our Home Secretary is considering putting more police resource into non-criminal incidents. I mean, make it make sense.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it doesn't really. I mean, if you see it in the context of identity politics and the broader culture war, you can see there is this urge by the authorities to kind of police what we speech rather than, actual crime where something, has physically happened. And I suppose in a sense, they may make sense of that because they don't have very much money. It's a lot easier to sit at a computer and, scour people's social media content to create the statistics they need to say that they're doing their job. But you're right. I mean, it's all down to this thing that, words of violence now, that slippery slope. We saw that a lot in the Black Lives Matter protests. We see it a lot in the culture wars where words and actions are being conflated, and it's an easy option for the police. I think the other thing is as well, we have to see this in the context of Labour's reaction to the riots, and let's have the usual qualifiers that rioting is unacceptable and, throwing bricks at mosques and all the rest of it is unacceptable. Of course it is. But I think they don't understand that those riots, those protests, they happened for a reason. There's a context to why people are angry and taken to the streets. But rather than solve that problem, they'd just like to silence any kind of criticism and stop us from, having a view on their policy. And the thing is, that is not going to solve problems of prejudice. I hate anti-Semitism, I hate anti-Muslim prejudice, but this isn't going to solve it, quietening people down. We need to discuss and debate these things.
Well, Mo Lavert, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Programme coordinator at the Academy of Ideas, of course. Really appreciate your time this afternoon.
Yes, well, stick with us. We've got lots more coming up. We're going to be back in Berlin because Sir Keir Starmer wants to reset relations with Europe. What does that mean?
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. And you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
Oh, I can't believe this.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, you shocked me. I never won a penny in my life.
If I was there, I'll buy you a drink.
Get your entry in now for another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash. Text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Labour government wants to introduce a legal right not to be bothered so that staff can ignore bosses' emails and texts and calls outside of normal office hours, including holidays. It's all part of Labour's election pledge to give everybody a right to switch off for the first time ever. Mutaz, do you ever turn your phone off?
I don't. If you want to work in a high-functioning job that pays well in the end, you have to keep your phone off. The workplace is competitive. If you work longer hours, you're more likely to get a promotion.
It depends what job you do. We work in news, the three of us. News goes on all the time. It would be ridiculous to think that we could ever leave our emails or a phone call alone because we don't know what's about to happen next. But say you're working in a clerical job or a manual job, If it's absolutely 9 to 5 and your job is over by then, there's no reason why you should be contacted by your boss except in an emergency.
Is that because people nowadays that they want to they don't want to live to work, they want to work to live?
People are more relaxed about work. I'm able to come in here dressed like this. But when it comes to legislation, you've got to be careful because it leads to ridiculous situations. The Euros, when England was playing Spain, one of the Spanish footballers was 17 years old. I think the Spanish FA had to pay a fine because in Germany, a 17-year-old shouldn't work after 8 p.m. or something like that.
Because with me now is the head of employment at Pickering Solicitors, Joanna Robson. Joanna, thanks for joining us. Is it a generational issue?
Yes, I think there is a generational issue. I think younger people, they generally want to make a really good impression. So sometimes you find the younger workforce are the ones that actually want to really put their mark out there and they really want to work longer hours. And that's going to, it's going to be difficult for younger people to, switch off.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 1 o'clock on Wednesday, the 28th of August. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Hall.
Now, GB News can exclusively reveal to you that more than 20,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally so far this year. We'll have the latest on those shocking numbers.
It comes as Sir Keir Starmer is in Germany in search of a new treaty. The Prime Minister insists the country is turning a corner on Brexit, but does he have a plan to take us back into the bloc?
Hold my beer. The boss of Ryanair has suggested introducing a 2-drink limit, just a 2-drink limit for passengers at airports to prevent violent behaviour on his airplanes.
And a 4-year-old boy has caused a stir after smashing a rare 3,500-year-old urn into pieces at a museum in Israel. But why on earth was it on display without any protections?
Good. Now, Tom suggested we cover this story, this 3,500-year-old urn that's smashed to pieces. Tell us why.
I just think everyone has been to a museum.
That's true.
Where they've seen,
hopefully,
perhaps slightly worried parents or grandparents with perhaps less than ruly children. And perhaps we've been those slightly unruly children once upon a time. Just sort of thinking, oh, my goodness me, what if the worst happens? And this is an example of the absolute worst happening. It's just the nightmare scenario for so many families. And what's supposed to be, a grand day, particularly over the summer holidays, you go and visit these sorts of museums, don't you? But my goodness me, you don't expect to break a vase that's older than King Solomon.
Well, at least it wasn't, Extinction Rebellion or Just Stop Oil or Annibal Rebellion that went in and tried to
Don't give them
destroy
ideas,
Emily.
In
there. Destroy everything in there. But yes, it's a sad sight, isn't it? I would be very scared if I'd done that. But apparently they don't need to pay it back. Are they letting them off?
Well, how
we'll
do
find
you
out.
pay back a priceless vase?
You can't really, can you?
We'll be speaking to an expert.
Glue it back together.
A little bit later in the programme. But, of course, get your views and opinions in. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get involved, whether it's about the urn or, indeed, the record number of migrants coming across. Either end of the spectrum today. That's all to come after your headlines with Sophia.
Tom, Emily, thank you. Good afternoon from the GB Newsroom. It's just gone 1 o'clock. Your headlines. The Prime Minister says a new UK-Germany treaty will be part of a wider reset with Europe. Sir Keir Starmer is in Germany to launch negotiations on a new bilateral treaty which hopes to boost business and increase joint action on illegal migration. Speaking during a joint news conference with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin, he described it as a moment of opportunity to deepen links between UK and Germany.
This treaty is part of a wider reset, grounded in a new spirit of cooperation, with our shared understanding that this will be developed at pace and that we hope to have agreed it by the end of the year. A Britain reconnected, resetting our relationship, rediscovering our common interests, delivering for working people. Britain and Germany already have an incredible relationship. Two great countries brought closer together than ever before, the strongest strategic partners in Europe and on the world stage.
Meanwhile, back in the UK, the Chancellor has addressed Sir Keir Starmer's warning that the autumn budget will be painful. Speaking a short while ago in Scotland, Rachel Reeves defended the government's decision on winter fuel payments.
The truth is that these are not decisions that I wanted to make, but these are decisions we had to make, given the inheritance that we faced from the Conservative government. And there'll be more difficult decisions to come in the budget later this year. It's a stark reality after the mess that the previous Conservative government have left this Labour government to inherit. It means difficult decisions, but without difficult decisions, we're going to face serious problems with our public finances. I will not take the risks that the Conservatives have taken previously that would put our economy in danger.
Now, GB News can reveal that more than 20,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally so far this year. The milestone was reached this morning as hundreds more made the journey in small boats from France. It's after 526 people arrived illegally in UK waters in 8 dinghies yesterday. There are just 100 spaces left in male prisons across England and Wales, according to the Ministry of Justice, with reports this is the closest the system has come to running out of places. It comes after the activation of Early Dawn, where defendants in active court cases are kept in police cells until standard prison spaces open up. Now, with hundreds more arrested from riots and Notting Hill carnival disorder over recent days and weeks, there are concerns prisons may run out of capacity. Shadow Leader of the House of Commons, Chris Philp, has called for more spaces.
During last year, every week there were about 100 additional prison places were created by the previous Justice Secretary Alex Chalk. So they were bringing on 100 more places each week than were being retired or withdrawn for refurbishment. So I think the solution to this is more prison places, and in the very short term, these rapid deployment cells, RDCs, are what I would like to see being used.
Now, a prison workshop instructor has appeared in court over an alleged inappropriate relationship with Zara Alina's murderer. 33-year-old Hayley Jones has been charged with misconduct in a public office, having allegedly acted in a way which amounted to an abuse of the public's trust. Jordan McSweeney is serving 33 years at HMP Belmarsh for the killing and sexual assault of the 35-year-old law graduate Zara Alina. The Israeli military has launched a major operation in the West Bank. Palestinian health officials claim at least 9 people have been killed in the strikes. The Israeli army confirmed today that they had begun what they said was an operation to counter terrorism in Yenin and Tulkarm. And Ryanair Chief Executive Michael O'Leary has called for alcohol limits in airports to tackle a rise in disorder on flights. He said passengers should be restricted to 2 drinks per journey to curb what he says is an increase in antisocial behaviour and violence. He told the Daily Telegraph violent outbursts are occurring weekly with alcohol, especially when mixed with other substances. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 7 minutes past 1. And now we're going to bring you more on our breaking exclusive. More than 20,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally so far this year.
The milestone was reached this morning as hundreds more made the journey in small boats from France. Well, to break this down is our Home and Security editor, Mark White. So, yes, that 20,000 milestone has now been surpassed.
Yes, indeed. For years we had, of course, Labour and opposition correctly accusing the previous government of losing control of its borders and unable to stop the flow of small boats coming into the UK. Well, now Labour is in charge. that is their problem to deal with, and it's a problem that, far from going away, is increasing in terms of the numbers coming across. The 20,000 milestone was reached this morning, when hundreds more small boat migrants were spotted in English waters. Our producer down in Kent estimates something in the region of 11 small boats. One Border Force vessel, Defender, has just arrived in the last 10 minutes into Dover. He counted, our producer, the number of people getting off that Border Force boat. It was 156. So split that between, it picked up 2 small boat loads. That's 78 on each of these small boats. They're absolutely packed out today. And if you extrapolate that across the 11 small boats, you're talking more than 800, 850 migrants. We're into record territory for the year so far. And this is now under Labour's watch, when they have said that they are going to stop the trade in people across the English Channel by smashing the gangs.
Mark, the ship that picks up migrants at sea and brings them to our shore is called Defender.
There are several of these Border Force vessels called Defender and Typhoon and various other...
I put it to you that perhaps it should change its name.
To...
Ferry.
Well, that's certainly one potential name that I could mention to Border Force. They may well be willing to take this on board. But I get what you're saying, because it does act effectively as a ferry. Once the Border Force vessel know that the small boat migrants have crossed into UK waters, their job is to intercept that boat, to pick those migrants up and to take them to Dover for processing. So in that sense, yes, it is a ferry.
Right, OK. Well, Mark White, thank you very much, our Home and Security editor. Now, while this is all going on in the Channel, another record day, Sir Keir Starmer, he's in Berlin. He's seeking an ambitious new treaty with Germany, something he describes as a once-in-a-generation chance to deliver for working people.
Well, appearing at a press conference alongside the German Chancellor, the Prime Minister said the new bilateral agreement will seek to boost trade, increase cooperation around areas like defence.
Well, joining us now is GBNews political correspondent Catherine Forster. Catherine, tell us more.
Yes, good afternoon, Tom and Emily. Well, a wildly busy couple of days for the Prime Minister. Yesterday in the Rose Garden, talking about painful decisions. Today in Germany, talking about potentially a new treaty with Germany, our second biggest trading partner. That they hope to agree by the end of the year. After this, he's going off to France. He'll be at the Paralympic opening ceremony, and he will be meeting Emmanuel Macron tomorrow. Now, this is all part of what he says. He wants a reset of relations with our European neighbours. Of course, he campaigned years ago for a second referendum. But he says that this is not about reversing Brexit, that there's no going back into the customs union or the single market. But nevertheless, he wants better relations. So a lot of talk in the press conference about security, about defence, emphasising their joint commitment to Ukraine, also to a two-state solution in the Middle East, to Israel's right to defend itself, but also to act within international law, etc. Some defence agreement may be forthcoming sooner than this broader treaty, but Sir Keir Starmer talking about growth and hoping to improve economic relations, hoping that that can help to grow our economy, which he said is our number one mission for him. That's quite difficult, though, isn't it? Because, of course, we are not in the European Union, so Germany is very restricted in what it can do in that sense. because we're not part of it. And also the EU is likely to want something in return for anything that it gives us. But I think more positively, we did hear about increased cooperation about illegal migration. Germany had those terrorist attack just over a week ago. And it does sound like Britain and Germany have agreed to more security cooperation and working together to smash the gangs.
Really interesting point there, Catherine. Of course, it can't be a trade deal. Germany doesn't control its own trade policy. It's set at a European level. Catherine Forster, thank you so much for the overview there. We're going to head now straight to Berlin and speak to the editor-in-chief of NIUS, Julian Reichelt. Julian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Or Julian, perhaps. I suppose.
Julian, it's so much easier. Say Julian.
Oh, brilliant. What does this mean to Germany? Are the German people noticing what is going on here with Sir Keir Starmer's visit?
Not very much, I would say, because the focus here in Germany is so much on that ISIS terrorist attack that we have witnessed a few days ago. So the political debate is all about the illegal migration issue. And I've just watched your program and seen that the 20,000 people arriving in the UK illegally is a huge alarming number for you. So if your prime minister wants to get some advice on how to lose control over the situation, our Chancellor Olaf Scholz is the perfect guy to talk to, because there will be 300,000 people coming to Germany illegally within this year. So this is what the debate is about. And, you know, I watched the press conference and, you know, they're debating a huge reset and a treaty they want to sign. I would argue, you know, if the UK wants to do something historically, a great reset with Germany, Olaf Scholz will be the wrong man to talk to. You know, I would say that, you know, it doesn't even make sense to really remember his name, because after what has happened in the past days, I would say this man is, you know, politically dead. He's going into 2 regional elections in the next days that he will lose in a landslide. There's lots of talk about revolution within his own Social Democratic Party. You know, and his job is on the line, and no one in Germany knows if he will make it through the next week politically. So, you know, signing a treaty with him by the end of the year, I highly doubt that's going to happen.
Is this whole thing is a pointless exercise. Really, nothing's going to come out of it because Olaf Scholz himself is on borrowed time. But the thing is, Keir Starmer's just been elected, so he's ready to speak to everyone.
Yes, so that's kind of what made the press conference interesting, not so much the words, because it was very much controlled. Olaf Scholz took questions that were clearly controlled by his press person before, so he could address the whole immigration issue. But what you could see there was, you know, one Social Democrat, Prime Minister Starmer, who was, you know, very much alive and vivid, just being elected, and one Social Democrat who is, you know, basically politically dead. And I think that was the main reason for Olaf Scholz, you know, doing this. Keir Starmer, for him, stands for a Social Democrat movement, you know, that can still win. And that is something Olaf Scholz certainly is not going to experience in his political career anymore.
It is so interesting to look at the fate of Olaf Scholz. Of course, it was only in 2021 when he led his party to first place, displacing the Christian Democrats in Germany after however many years, 15, 16, 17 years in power in Germany? A long time. And now he's in 3rd place in the polls. Now he's crashed down to 15% in the polls. I mean, is this a trajectory that perhaps Sir Keir Starmer might follow if he follows the policy agenda of Olaf Scholz?
If he takes advice from Olaf Scholz on illegal migration, that is a trajectory he will follow. Because that's a policy that Olaf Scholz has implemented, the policy of doing nothing, of not protecting any border, you know, not putting a meaningful force on the border that will protect the country from illegal immigration. That is what is driving down Olaf Scholz's poll. It is the economy, of course. The economy in Germany is doing horribly. So also there, you know, an economic treaty between the UK and Germany is an economic treaty with the country on the way down. But what is really driving down Olaf Scholz's polls is migration and the crime that comes with it.
I mean, Julian, is it Olaf Scholz's fault, really? I mean, it was Angela Merkel who opened the door.
Yeah, absolutely. It was Angela Merkel. Bear in mind that Olaf Scholz was in government with Angela Merkel for many years before he became Chancellor. He was in charge of finances here in Germany. But he has continued. He has chosen to continue Angela Merkel's completely failed policies. He's also in a coalition with the Green Party that is even more no borders, no nations, open borders, welcome everyone. So he has zero political wiggle room to actually do something about it. I will just give you one great example. So this attack, this heinous terror attack, ISIS returning to Germany, happened in the city of Solingen. The mayor of the city of Solingen is a party friend, social democrat of Olaf Scholz, who is accused by the local prosecutor of being part of a human trafficking organization, a human trafficking crime ring. That kind of tells you how hopeless the social democrats are when it comes to doing something about it. They are very much part of the problem in the city where this illegal immigrant turned ISIS killed 3 people.
Well, it sounds like you don't have much trust in this joint action plan that they've just agreed to on illegal migration. Julian Reichelt, very interesting to speak to you, Editor-in-Chief of NIUS, and in Berlin.
It is fascinating to get the German perspective here. Because,
really
of course,
interesting.
So often our snarky media in this country rightly points out to when Boris Johnson had a world leader over, when he was in a bit of political trouble, to try and seem statesmanlike.
That's what Olaf is doing.
That's exactly what Olaf Scholz is doing.
But no one's listening because of the horror show that was last week.
Yeah.
But we've got lots more coming up on today's show. Should there be an alcohol limit at airports? Is it getting out of control? The boss of Ryanair is calling for a 2-drink limit to reduce the risk of violent behaviour on flights. Well, let us know your thoughts.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Susie, let's start with you, and you will say that being a mum is the equivalent of a second full-time job.
Yeah, I mean, I think any mum would say that. But, you know, it's a massive privilege to be a mother. It's a massive privilege to, to have children. But it's an incredible amount of work. Most people would argue that you are, it's a privilege and you don't do it for this, but actually you are contributing to the economy because you're also producing the future people that are going to go into work.
If men were doing the lion's share of the childcare as well, everyone would know about it, but women don't shout about it. They put up and get on with it. But times are changing, aren't they, Reem? And I think, there's nobody here suggesting that women need special favours, but they need to have certain understanding within the workplace. There's arguments, isn't there, for Pregnant Then Screwed, who's campaigning 100% for meritocracy, but they want to see things like flexible working so that women can work around childcare responsibilities, and they want to be able to make sure that women aren't squeezed out of the labour market because they simply can't juggle both things.
Absolutely. I mean, look, being a mother is one of the most incredible things that any woman can do. And I think it's wonderful that so many women are able to work and have children. I think it's wonderful. I think we should have the utmost respect for every single woman that is able to balance and juggle all of that. However, I think we need to be having these conversations about how best employers can cater towards different people's needs. We want to be encouraging parents to be working as well as having children and contributing to the economy. But it is incredibly unfair if we begin to give those particular people preferential treatment in the workplace. And I think that some of their childless colleagues will begin to resent them.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 23 minutes past 1. Now, the CEO of Ryanair, Michael O'Leary, is calling for a strict two-drink limit at airports to curb violent behaviour on flights.
I don't know how that would work in practice. So incidents of passenger altercations on flights are on the rise. And so the debate over how to handle these intoxicated travellers is heating up. So could limiting alcohol be the solution, or is this a bit of an overreach from Mr. O'Leary?
Well, let's ask the travel correspondent at The Independent, Simon Calder. Simon, this is a bold move, but we've heard many such sort of big, eye-catching sort of announcements from the Ryanair boss before.
Yes, we have, and good afternoon to you. So, a really interesting move here. What I found absolutely fascinating, speaking to Michael O'Leary, the chief executive of Europe's biggest budget airline yesterday, was that he said going from basically 0 cases of fights between passengers on board 5 or 10 years ago, they were now getting 1 incident every week. He said that this was partly fueled, of course, by alcohol, also by drugs, people taking illicit powder or tablets. And he told me that he wants some action to make sure this gets reduced, but it won't be affecting his alcohol sales on board.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it, Simon? Could this just be a ploy to make sure that people buy the booze on board at extra bumper prices?
Well, it's undoubtedly a problem. I've been on a plane, not actually a Ryanair flight, but a Wizz Air flight, where there was a scuffle between passengers. We were flying from Luton to Budapest. It was clear that it was an early evening flight. Quite a lot of people had been at the airport quite a long time. And in the end, we flew around in circles over Hungary for about half an hour, and then the police were waiting when we landed. And it is quite scary inside an aircraft where you've got very little room. And of course, that's why you get so many diversions. And it's very, very expensive for the airline, very annoying for the passengers. But it seems to be happening a lot, and Michael O'Leary wants something done about it.
I mean, Simon, on Ryanair, they're pretty vicious, the staff, if your bag is slightly too big. I mean, I've got pretty furious, I must say, when I'm told by someone standing there that my bag, because it's 1 millimetre too big for their little box, that I have to, rearrange my items or pay 50 quid or whatever it is. Surely they can just turn drunkards away.
Well, that's actually a really good point, because if you had a system whereby people who were routinely breathalyzed, not necessarily on every flight, they know the target flights, and in particular, Michael O'Leary mentioned Liverpool and Glasgow and Edinburgh and Manchester to Ibiza, you could effectively breathalyze everybody getting onto the aircraft. He said that actually it's sort of slightly too easy. If you're with friends and one person has had clearly too much, then they can kind of shuffle them on board. But I agree, there ought to be more scrutiny of people, because obviously it's much, much better to tackle this problem at ground level than when you're at 35,000 feet.
Well, Simon, as you've been saying, you spoke to Michael O'Leary yesterday. Should we have a little listen to what he said?
Great.
We need to have a ban on airports, not selling alcohol, but limiting the amount of alcohol that can be sold to any passenger to 2 alcoholic drinks. So in the same way that you have to show your boarding pass when you go through duty-free to buy cigarettes or alcohol, we believe you should have to show your boarding pass to buy an alcoholic drink at a bar at an airport, and you shouldn't be served more than 2 alcoholic drinks, particularly when flights are delayed. The real challenge is when flights are running late, and this summer ATC delays are at all-time high. Passengers tend to drink more alcohol, they become more inebriated, and that's not good news for when they're getting on board 1, 2, 3 hour flights.
I completely understand what he's saying there, Simon. Obviously, if people are sat there drinking for half the day, they're not going to be perhaps the most ruly or orderly of passengers when they eventually get their delayed flight. But isn't that perhaps more of an impetus for Michael O'Leary to make sure his flights are not as delayed as they sometimes are? And also, frankly, what else do you do in an airport?
Quite, yes. It's a serious problem. And we've got issues raised by, for example, the whole business of air traffic control and the delays that are being caused there. But yeah, you've got a couple of hours. I've been in exactly that position. I'm sure you have too. And nobody likes a drink at an airport more than I do. And maybe I'll have one on board as well. By the way, I'm only drinking tea here, just to be absolutely clear. But the crucial problem is that if you've got a lot of time, a lot of people, it's very encouraging to get people to drink, then you're going to have problems. And actually, I conducted 6 months ago a social media survey on this. And OK, social media, absolutely not rock solid market research, but still over 6,000 people voted. And I was really surprised that the majority in favour of a total alcohol ban on flights and at airports was 52 to 48, which these days I think we count as pretty conclusive, don't we?
All right. Well, Simon Calder, thank you very much indeed, and for also sharing that interview with the CEO of Ryanair. I think it's always about the bottom line, isn't it? We're joined by the author of I'm Never Drinking Again and 8 Years Sober, Dom McGregor. Dom, I believe you think it would be a very good idea if we just banned alcohol from airports altogether. Is that right?
Yeah, I think what Simon was saying there was very interesting. You know, we've got 52% of people who want to ban it completely. Makes a lot of sense. You know, at the end of the day, we're talking about predominantly passenger safety here. You know, people having fights on airplanes. It's not too crazy to think that someone could die from this one day. You know, a punch or a bang a head or something like that, and then you're into a whole world of problems. So we know these kind of things are not happening on normal flights when there's not alcohol involved. People don't just start fighting out of it. It's definitely alcohol induced. So when you've got a conversation around passenger safety, I think it's sensible to look at what we can do to make sure people are as safe as possible while travelling.
Now, Dom, I've been on a few flights. I've never seen a fight. I've never seen a fight break out on a plane, but I do enjoy to repeatedly get my Carlsbergs in when I'm on the flight.
You're a charming drunk, Tom, like me.
Well, but isn't this the thing? It's obviously a tiny minority of people who pose any sort of problem. Wouldn't the better solution be to weed those people out, perhaps really strict lifetime bans on flying for anyone that does engage in that sort of behaviour, so they don't ruin it for the rest of us?
Yeah, it's an interesting position. I don't think this is kind of complete nanny state when you say, like, look, 2 drink minimum is a lot. You know, a lot of times people get to the airport an hour, 2 hours before, so having 2 drinks in that period of time is reasonable. And if your flight is delayed, like Simon was saying previously, there's other things to do than just drink. You know, it's not about just getting drunk before you go on a flight. So I do think having
what you'll get is people going to duty free, stocking up on a litre bottle of vodka and making their own drinks on the flight under the chairs. That's the problem. People will always find a way around it.
They're not allowed to anymore. You're not allowed to open your duty free.
They put it in the special bags. Don't they?
Come on, if you want it, you can get at it. I'm sure. If you're one of these people who behaves like a hooligan on a flight, you'll find a way, won't you? Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I do think you're right around the kind of banning piece. You know, if someone has been in a fight or that's happened, they should be banned. You know, that is black and white. And obviously we're dealing with people's security. So you've got people's passports, you know who they are, you know where they're sat. So you can do that. So I do think there should be some punishment and some deterrent for people stopping doing these kind of things.
Fair enough. Thank you very much indeed. Dom McGregor, author of I'm Never Drinking Again and 8 Years Sober. Thank you very much for your time.
Now, let's bring you this miracle from a motorway in Gloucestershire. Drivers on the A419 got a massive surprise yesterday.
Oh, really? Well, a small plane crashed onto the highway next to an airfield. As you can see, the pilot and passenger, both members of the Cotswold Gliding Club, narrowly escaped the disaster as onlookers quickly arrived to help. There you go. An eyewitness told Gloucestershire Live, the local paper, that it looked as though the aircraft stalled and nosedived into the main road.
Blimey, what an incredible set of images.
That is a miracle.
And the fact that they fell out of the air and survived, that is That is astonishing.
That was a surprise to us both.
Yeah.
Amazing story. Perhaps we'll come back to that after the headlines.
This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more, of course, coming up on today's programme. Not least, that vase, that smashed ancient vase that we keep talking about, will bring you the news on that. And also, nothing will be safe. The Conservatives warn the Labour Party will launch a tax raid on the middle classes after the Prime Minister warned that the autumn budget will be painful in a speech yesterday. First, though, it's your headlines.
It's 1:33. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says the new UK-Germany treaty will be part of a wider reset with Europe. Sir Keir Starmer is in Germany to launch negotiations on a new bilateral treaty, which hopes to boost business and increase joint action on illegal migration. Speaking during a joint news conference with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin, he described it as a moment of opportunity to deepen links between the UK and Germany.
This treaty is part of a wider reset, grounded in a new spirit of cooperation, with our shared understanding that this will be developed at pace and that we hope to have agreed it by the end of the year. A Britain reconnected, resetting our relationship, rediscovering our common interests, delivering for working people. Britain and Germany already have an incredible relationship. Two great countries brought closer together than ever before, the strongest strategic partners in Europe and on the world stage.
Now, GB News can reveal that more than 20,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally so far this year. The milestone was reached this morning as hundreds more made the journey in small boats from France. It's after 526 people arrived illegally in UK waters in 8 dinghies yesterday. A prison workshop instructor has appeared in court over an alleged inappropriate relationship with Zara Alina's murderer. 33-year-old Hayley Jones has been charged with misconduct in a public office, having allegedly acted in a way which amounted to an abuse of the public's trust. Jordan McSweeney is serving 33 years in HMP Belmarsh for the killing and sexual assault of the 35-year-old law graduate Zara Alina. And there's been a miracle on a motorway as drivers on the A419 in Gloucestershire got a surprise yesterday. A small plane crashed onto the highway next to an airfield. The pilot and passenger, both members of the Cotswold Gliding Club, narrowly escaped the disaster as onlookers quickly arrived to help. An eyewitness told Gloucestershire Live that it looked as though the aircraft stalled and nosedived into the main road. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3212 and €1.1883. The price of gold is £1,891 and 96 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,328 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through the rest of the day, it will feel very warm across eastern areas and some central areas of England. Sunny spells for many of us, but a risk of some quite heavy showers where we see this weather front push in across parts of Scotland, northern England, Wales, southwestern England as well later on today. So risk of some showers for some of us, particularly across the north and west. The next batch of rain will spread into parts of western Scotland later on this afternoon as well as Northern Ireland. But ahead of this this area should stay dry. The sunshine will be relatively hazy, but as I said, it is going to feel very warm. Warmest day of the week for many of us. Temperatures climbing as high as 29 degrees in the south and east, but for many areas in central eastern England in the mid to high 20s. A little bit fresher elsewhere, but still relatively warm across the east coast of Scotland, where it should stay dry through much of the day. Temperatures around 20 degrees or the high teens across the east. Further west, though, where we've got the heavier rain, potentially some quite thundery downpours, it will be cooler. We'll turn a little bit drier overnight across parts of Northern Ireland and into Wales and the southwest as this band of cloud slowly sinks further south and east into more central and eastern areas of England. So that brings a risk of the odd shower across eastern England, eastern coast of Northern England, the east coast of Scotland this evening, but then things will turn more widely dry overnight tonight. We could see a few mist and fog patches developing across some southern counties and a few further showers spreading into the far north and west. But with clear and dry skies for most of us, it's going to be a cooler night tonight than last night. Quite widely, temperatures dipping down into single figures rurally. So a fresh but bright start to the day on Thursday. Quite a lot of sunshine around on Thursday. It will be a fresher feeling day through much of the day, but still pretty warm in the sunshine, particularly across more southern areas where we're away from the breeze, as there will be a few showers still affecting the west and northern areas of Scotland. And here temperatures a little below average, elsewhere just above ceasing.
The latest GB News travel.
Hello, good afternoon to you. I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to Blythe Bridge in Staffordshire. Firstly, the Uttoxeter Road, the westbound A50. Now, that's currently closed. There's a lorry fire no way through between the Blythe Bridge roundabout and the Creda roundabout by Blythe Bridge, causing delays. A northbound M5 in Somerset at the turn off of Bridgewater South at junction 24. Now, lane 1 at the inside lane there's been coned off. There's a broken down car transporter, naturally causing delays on the approach. Anti-clock M25 as you head towards the Wisley interchange at junction 10. The earlier breakdown's gone, all lanes back open then. Patchy queues though back towards Chertsey at 11. And the southbound M1 Milton Keynes, junction 14 down to 13, lane 1 of 4's coned off there. There's a breakdown causing 1 or 2 delays on the live cameras. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Okay, well, welcome back. You're watching and listening to Good Afternoon Britain with me, Emily Carver, and Tom Harwood. Now, lots of you have been getting in touch about your experiences on flights. John says, funny how on-flight aggro only seems to affect Ryanair and EasyJet. What are you saying? Are you saying that the punters who use Ryanair are barbarians?
Well, this all comes, of course, in the context of Michael O'Leary, the CEO of Ryanair, suggesting that people should only be limited to 2 pints at airports because anything more tends to make people, well, get a bit fighty.
You are funny. Someone has got in touch, I can't remember who it was, but said, OK, I'll have 2 pints of whiskey then. Not sure that's what Michael O'Leary had in mind. He'd be happy for you to buy those on flight, though, I'm sure. Or in flight.
Well, isn't this perhaps the sneaky suspicion here that actually he doesn't want people to buy pints at airports so that he'll have to buy the tiny little tins that they serve on Ryanair flights.
For $7.99 or whatever they are.
Yes, but Margaret says we can't smoke on a flight, so let's not be allowed to drink alcohol on a flight. I used to work in a public place where people were served alcohol, and you wouldn't want these people who were a problem in the restaurant, not to mention on an aircraft 40,000 feet in the air. So Margaret is actually in favour.
Yes, I wonder, Margaret, do you drink? Because I imagine if you don't drink, then, you know, it's easy to ban things for other people when you don't partake. But perhaps if you did like a drink, you might be a bit angry that just a bunch of, you know, losers who can't handle their drink ruin it for everyone else. Some people need a drink sometimes as well.
Especially on a Ryanair flight. The seats are made of paper and they're this thin and you're crushed in next to other people. I mean, you can't be there fully conscious the whole way. I mean, you won't be able to live with yourself.
I mean, no one needs a drink, obviously, but some people find it very scary going on flights, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
That's one way to soothe the nerves, perhaps. But yes, it is interesting that it's happening on the budget airline, that it's the budget airline boss who's thinking about all of this.
But I don't know. I think if you want to avoid sort of rowdy behaviour, you know, lads' holidays, hen parties, all the rest of it. I think there are certain times of day that you could probably get your flight. Whichever company you get your flight with, whichever airline, you can probably find a time of day that's going to be less likely to be with all of the lads' holidays and the hen parties.
Yes, I've been on a very late night flight, I won't say from where, and someone got nicked, or that's what everyone on the flight said. He got nicked, he's getting nicked, he's getting nicked. And yes, he was indeed thrown into the back of a police van and taken off by the police as soon as he landed in whatever London airport it was. Anyway, the Conservatives are warning nothing will be left after Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer told reporters at Downing Street yesterday that those with the broadest shoulders will have to carry the burden. It comes as Rachel Reeves refuses to rule out inheritance and capital gains tax rises. The Chancellor not answering yes or no 3 times when asked if she could specifically rule out raising the 2 taxes at the budget. What are we to make of this, Tom?
I think we're going to see a pensions raid. What all of the speculation, certainly over the last couple of days, suggests is that not only will we be taxed on our pensions when the money comes out at the end, we're also going to start being taxed on our contributions towards our pensions too.
Oh, brilliant.
And that's going to be taking a considerable amount of, well, frankly, the hard-earned savings of people in work. I saw some estimates from, I think it was the Institute for Fiscal Studies, that this would raise a couple of £2 billion. But it would mean that people are in a more precarious position in retirement.
Well, they can't really squeeze income. I mean, they've ruled it out anyway. But when you've got the top 10% of income taxpayers paying 60% of everything that goes into the Treasury for that tax, then, you know, it's hard to say, oh, those with the broadest shoulders should contribute more. I mean, they already do. And the problem is people are more mobile than ever. You can only squeeze them so much. And if you squeeze the middle classes, when they believe they're doing the right thing, saving, investing, working hard, whatever it is, it's going to be very difficult few years for Keir Starmer.
And this is the other problem. I mean, if we're going to see capital gains tax perhaps doubled, if we're going to see pensions taxed, taxing contributions towards pensions too, I mean, these are all the sort of things that people are speculating about. If we're going to see moves like that, what you're going to get is less saving and therefore less investment. Yeah. And the one thing the British economy is crying out for is investment. That creates the jobs, that creates the growth, that helps companies go from being, you know, small to more. That helps, you know, sole traders get the equipment that they need. That helps the economy really go from one level to the next. You're sort of shooting yourself in the foot if you stop that sort of investment incentive.
Yeah, and offering billions and billions in public sector pay rises. Yes, there will be people who argue that they're underpaid and they should be given a boost, but surely that accounts for some of this £22 billion financial black hole that no one knew about, apparently, even though it was written in black and white from the OBR. But, hey, that's the state that we're in. So we shall see in October what actually happens. But Keir Starmer certainly painting a miserable picture.
Absolutely. I've been seeing all of the different ploys that people are getting up to sort of try and avoid the coming tax bombshell in October. You know, where you should be putting your money. But frankly, given that people are doing all of this planning, will they even raise the amount of money they expect they're going to raise with these taxes?
Well, this is the thing. Left-wing economists seem to think that whatever they do with the tax regime, people won't change their behaviour. They'll continue to invest, they'll continue to save, they'll continue to reside in this country and pay all these taxes and be happy to do so. But we've learned throughout history and from other countries that people do change their behaviour and you might actually not get in as much as you thought you might. Anyway, let us know your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say. Where do you think these tax rises are going to fall?
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's programme.
Yes, a 4-year-old boy has earned himself a punishment after smashing a rare 3,500-year-old urn at a museum in Israel. Find out more after this short break.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It'll be back to school for many kids in the coming weeks, and my boy Jude starts school for the first time in a few weeks. Kate Stewart, who's a Liverpool entrepreneur, has just launched her annual school uniform appeal. It's an incredible initiative she set up a few years ago to ensure those who couldn't afford school uniforms for their kids can now access uniform for free. And we're delighted to be joined by Kate now. Was there any particular reason you decided to do this and help other families in the way you are?
Every child should walk through the doors in September ready to learn, focused on their learning and education, not thinking about what they're wearing or that their pants have got holes in or they haven't got brand new jumpers on.
You posted something on your social media, this incident with the Asda skirt. Somebody was not allowed to wear a skirt that looked similar to the uniform but was from Asda to help with the costs.
I've campaigned tirelessly about this. Uniforms are put in place so everybody is the same. Children are the same as their peers. No designer wear is allowed, which I agree with. But schools are making their uniforms designer by insisting that their logo must be on the uniform. Now, a uniform from a supermarket can cost £20. Children fall over, they get holes in the pants. You can go to Asda and buy a new pair of pants for £3. When they've got the logo on, you're looking at £20. Stop the logos. Let's go back to basics. A school uniform consists of grey pants, a white shirt, a red, green, whatever colour cardigan, and make it accessible for families. If the schools want the logos on, then give it to the families to iron on or sew on. That's fine. Oh, so go onto my Instagram. It's Kate Stewart Life. The link's in my bio. And please give what you can. The price of a cup of coffee will make a massive difference.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 10 to 2. Now, a 4-year-old boy in Israel has shattered a 3,500-year-old urn at the Hecht Museum.
Yes, the Bronze Age artefact, displayed without protective glass, we must note, broke into 1,000 pieces after the child unknowingly knocked it over.
Well, despite the mishap, the museum director has invited the boy and his mother back for a guided tour, reassuring them that the urn will be carefully restored.
Oh, so they're actually going to try and restore it. Well, we're joined now by historian Martin Whittock. Martin, I mean, this little boy, bit of a disaster, but it sounds like the museum are all too happy to kind of let it go and try to make the best of a bad situation.
Well, they're being remarkably kind. You might be interested that here I've got some broken pieces of a 1,800-year-old bits of pottery. 1,800 these bust bits are, but I'm really glad to say I didn't break them. They were bust when they came out of the ground. But what's happened in Israel, obviously it's a real shock, and it reminded me of something that happened in 2006. Do you remember that somebody walking down the stairs at the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge tripped and knocked over no less than 3 Qing dynasty, early 18th century Chinese vases, one after the other, like the most expensive dominoes you've ever played in your life, and it came to 100,000 quid.
Oh, no.
100,000 quid. And I remember then the Fitzwilliam were remarkably gracious about it, at least to start with anyway, in public. So this is a shock. Found in the West Bank, found near the Jordan, this urn, 3,500 years old, smashed. I was surprised that it wasn't more protected by glass, but I guess to be fair, it was a big thing, it was a very large thing, and I guess they wanted it to be more accessible. And I guess accessible was kind of the problem.
It's been too accessible.
Yes. But the lovely thing is the director has said They can restore it. They will restore it. Museums are really brilliant at doing this, so you can't see the join even. It really is very well done. And he's actually invited the little boy and the mum, if they'll own up, they did a runner after this. I can understand that, to come in and watch the restoration process. So, you know, what starts off in a state like this could at some point become a completed vase, and it could become part of the educational program of that little boy and his mum and anybody who watches the film. So that's a good bit coming out of what otherwise must have been a slightly stressful moment in the Hecht Museum, I imagine.
Yeah, Martin, when I read this, I immediately thought of that Fitzwilliam event. I was a boy at school in Cambridge at the time, and I mean, everyone was talking about it. But the biggest question was, why on earth did the museum put these 3 priceless Qing dynasty vases in a row down the stairs? And I suppose there's got to be questions asked of museums in the way in which they display these sorts of items, because this is every family's nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is easily done. I mean, you know, I was a very clumsy 4-year-old. Some would say I was a clumsy older year-old as well. And this kind of thing easily happens. It wasn't malice. He probably tripped, or he probably reached out to touch it, and the thing went over and it was gone. So, yeah, perhaps we do have to have more protective guardrails around these things. Because the problem is, when they're there, when they are so touchable, you just do want to sometimes reach out and actually feel the thing that was touched by somebody, you know, 3,500 years ago. And unfortunately, this shows what happens if you do.
Well,
Don't
absolutely.
do it.
And Martin,
don't try this at home. Don't try this at home.
I think so, but I also think, you know, protective glass sometimes ruins the experience in a bit. You don't get to see absolutely everything. Martin, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for talking us through that story. It's amazing it's made international news, isn't it, really? Historian Martin Whittock, great to chat to you as always.
And, of course, your bits of pot.
And the bits of pot, yes, I enjoyed those too. I don't have anything that old in my possession.
3,500-year-old? No?
No.
I've got socks that old.
Socks. Yeah, one sock. Can't find the other one. Can't find the other one, but there you go.
Well, this is Good Afternoon
Did people wear
Britain
socks 3,500 years ago?
I think they were all sandals. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. Of course, don't go anywhere. We're going to be talking about those fewer than 100 spaces left in male prisons in England and Wales. An ongoing crisis in our prisons. How on earth can we deliver law, order, crime and justice?
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through the end of this week, it will be more widely settled. Still some cooler nights, though, but still feeling quite warm in the day. However, through the rest of this evening, we've still got some wet weather to come for some north and western areas. That will push into the south and east due to this weather front moving south and eastwards throughout this evening. So bringing some showery outbreaks of rain to the likes of northeastern England, perhaps the odd shower across eastern areas of England as well. But that should generally clear away as the night goes on. So a clear and dry night to come once that rain does clear, and we could see some mist and fog developing across more southern counties. So a fresher night with clearer skies, but that will make for a brighter start to Thursday. So plenty of sunshine, particularly across eastern and southern areas of the UK. The north and west will see some heavier showers pushing in from western Scotland first thing. So a wet start for western areas of Scotland, parts of the Highlands, the Western Isles. Temperatures only around 12 or 11 degrees first thing. More in the way of sunshine across parts of Northern Ireland, and southern areas of Scotland staying largely dry. Now we could see the odd shower across parts of Wales, southwest England, northwest England in fact, but many central and eastern areas will be very much dry through the morning and actually through much of tomorrow. It's looking like a fairly fine day. Light winds for much of England and Wales. It will feel quite pleasant in the sunshine, but the air is going to be fresher tomorrow, so we'll lose that humid feel that we have had today. So temperatures will be a little bit lower tomorrow compared to today, just in the lower 20s, 23 or 24 at best in the south and east, closer to those higher teens further north. Well, we've got a fairly brisk breeze in the north. It will stay quite fresh well into the evening as well. Potentially some quite strong winds affecting the Northern Isles through Thursday evening, but the showers should move away to the north and east through Thursday, leaving a fine day quite widely through Friday and Saturday as well. A risk of showers arrives in the south from Sunday. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. Time is ticking. Get your entry in now. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Wednesday, the 28th of August. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Starmer's European charm offensive. The Prime Minister is in Berlin to seek a new treaty with Germany as part of his attempts to reset relations with Europe after Brexit.
He is indeed. And crisis in our prisons. There are now just 100 spaces left in male prisons across England and Wales after a surge in arrests over the bank holiday weekend.
GB News can exclusively reveal more than 20,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally so far this year. We'll have the latest on these shocking new developments.
And a question for you. Would you eat a bug burger? Scientists backed by the government are encouraging the consumption of meat alternatives as part of the fight to cut emissions from agriculture. Yuck. Well, we always bring you a varied agenda on this show. Bug burgers, Tom? Would you eat one?
Why would you need to make a burger out of bugs when there is perfectly good lab-grown meat being developed that will be the answer to all of these problems?
Not eating your lab-grown meat. There are perfectly good cows.
I've got a friend who was recently in San Francisco.
Oh, right.
And he visited a company that is making smoked salmon by just growing the meat and not growing the head or the skin or like anything else. They just grow the salmon meat. Isn't that remarkable?
It is remarkable. I can't say it whets the appetite.
And then you look at it on a plate, and it doesn't taste any, because they're growing meat. It's real meat. It's just not grown with a brain or eyes attached.
And there are lots of conspiracies about all this, aren't there?
Oh, I'm sure there are conspiracies about everything.
Lots of conspiracies that they all want us to be eating bugs and crickets and dust from bugs.
When the government funds bug burger research, I suppose that's where the conspiracies come from. But we don't need to eat bugs. We can grow real meat, and I genuinely think that a little way down the line, we're going to be thinking, actually, it's a lot more efficient to grow meat without... it's going to be cheaper, it's going to be better for the environment.
And the meat trade is quite cruel,
and we're going to say... And there'll be fewer farmyard animals, but they'll live happier lives.
What will farmers do? They'll have to get into the lab-grown stuff. Upskill or downskill.
Or just sort of diversify.
Diversify. Let us know your thoughts. Would you eat a bug burger? Why do you think the government wants us to be doing this? Or at least is looking into it. Anyway, gbnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch, but it's your headlines with Sophia.
Emily, Tom, thank you. Good afternoon from the GB Newsroom. It's just gone 2 o'clock. Your headlines. The Prime Minister says a new UK-Germany treaty will be part of a wider reset with Europe. Sir Keir Starmer is in Germany to launch negotiations on a new bilateral treaty which hopes to boost business and increase joint action on illegal migration. Speaking during a joint news conference with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin, he described it as a moment of opportunity to deepen links between the UK and Germany.
This treaty is part of a wider reset, grounded in a new spirit of cooperation, with our shared understanding that this will be developed at pace and that we hope to have agreed it by the end of the year. A Britain reconnected, resetting our relationship, rediscovering our common interests, delivering for working people. Britain and Germany already have an incredible relationship. Two great countries brought closer together than ever before, the strongest strategic partners in Europe and on the world stage.
Meanwhile, back in the UK, the Chancellor has addressed Sir Keir Starmer's warning that the autumn budget will be painful. Speaking a short while ago in Scotland, Rachel Reeves defended the government's decision on winter fuel payments.
The truth is that these are not decisions that I wanted to make, but these are decisions we had to make, given the inheritance that we faced from the Conservative government. And there'll be more difficult decisions to come in the budget later this year. It's a stark reality after the mess that the previous Conservative government have left this Labour government to inherit. It means difficult decisions, but without difficult decisions, we're going to face serious problems with our public finances. I will not take the risks that the Conservatives have taken previously that would put our economy in danger.
Now, GB News can exclusively reveal that more than 20,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally so far this year. The milestone was reached this morning as hundreds more made the journey in small boats from France. It's after 526 people arrived illegally in UK waters in 8 dinghies yesterday. There are just 100 spaces left in male prisons across England and Wales, according to the Ministry of Justice. With reports this is the closest the system has come to running out of places. It comes after the activation of Early Dawn, where defendants in active court cases are kept in police cells until standard prison spaces open up. Now, with hundreds more arrests from riots and Notting Hill carnival disorder over recent days and weeks, there are concerns prisons may run out of capacity. Shadow Leader of the House of Commons, Chris Philp, has called for more spaces.
During last year, every week there were about 100 net additional prison places were created by the previous Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk. So they were bringing on 100 more places each week than were being retired or withdrawn for refurbishment. So I think the solution to this is more prison places, and in the very short term, these rapid deployment cells, RDCs, are what I would like to see being used.
Now, in other news, a new contempt of court application has been lodged against Tommy Robinson over alleged breaches of a High Court order from 2021. That's according to the Attorney General's office. Law officers allege that Mr Robinson breached an injunction barring him from repeating libellous allegations through 6 actions between June and July this year. A prison workshop instructor has appeared in court over an alleged inappropriate relationship with Zara Alina's murderer. 33-year-old Hayley Jones has been charged with misconduct in a public office, having allegedly acted in a way which amounted to an abuse of the public's trust. Jordan McSweeney is serving 33 years at HMP Belmarsh for the killing and sexual assault of the 35-year-old law graduate Zara Alina. The Israeli military has launched a major operation in the West Bank. Palestinian health officials claim at least 9 people have been killed in the strikes. The Israeli army confirmed today that they had begun what they said was an operation to counter terrorism in Yemen and Tulkarm. And there's been a miracle on a motorway as drivers on the A419 in Gloucestershire got a surprise yesterday. A small plane crashed onto the highway next to an airfield. As you can see, the pilot and passenger, both members of the Cotswold Gliding Club, narrowly escaped the disaster as onlookers quickly arrived to help. An eyewitness told Gloucestershire Live that it looked as though the aircraft stalled and nosedived into the main road. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler, more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. Welcome back. It is now 2:08 and a man has appeared in court today charged with the attempted murder of a 32-year-old woman at the Notting Hill Carnival on Sunday. Shaquille Thabou is also charged with violent disorder and possession of an offensive weapon and appeared in the dock with his 2 brothers today.
Well, we can go live now to Westminster Magistrates Court and speak with GB News national reporter Charlie Peters, who has been there. Charlie, what went down?
Good afternoon. So Shaquille Thabou, the 20-year-old, was remanded in custody after being charged with the attempted murder of a 32-year-old mother who was stabbed at the Notting Hill Carnival on Sunday evening. She was described as an innocent bystander in some violence at the carnival on Sunday. A mother of a 3-year-old daughter who appeared with her at that carnival with her family and her friends. Now, Shaquille Thabou was also charged with violent disorder and possession of an offensive weapon. He gave no plea, was remanded into custody and will next appear at the Old Bailey on the 25th of September. As he left the dock, his 2 brothers were also there with him. He hugged them both and shared some words with them as he was taken away by the custody staff. After that, the District Judge John Zaney, turned his attention to his 2 brothers, Sheldon Thabou, 24, and Shaim Thabou, aged 22. Now, Sheldon was charged with violent disorder, possession of a stun gun, and the assault of an emergency worker. He gave no plea, but his brother Shaim, the 22-year-old, he was charged with violent disorder and assaulting an emergency worker. He did say that he was going to plead not guilty. They also have been remanded in custody ahead of an appearance at the Old Bailey on the 25th of September. But it is their youngest brother, Shaquille, the 20-year-old, who is with the most serious charge of attempted murder against a woman, the 32-year-old mother, described as an innocent bystander. The court also heard that she was suffering from life-changing injuries. She was still in a hospital in a critical condition, having suffered a cardiac arrest after the stabbing on Sunday, losing a significant amount of blood, where she remains in a London hospital in a coma. So all 3 defendants, those 3 brothers, will appear at the Old Bailey on the 25th of September.
Thank you very much, Charlie Peters. 25th of September, a date for our diary. Appreciate your work.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, moving on, Sir Keir Starmer, he's been in Berlin today. He's seeking an ambitious new treaty with Germany, something he describes as a once-in-a-generation chance to deliver for working people.
Well, the meeting is also part of a wider push to reset relationships with the European Union after Brexit.
And appearing at a press conference alongside the German Chancellor, the Prime Minister said the new agreement between Britain and Germany on issues ranging from defence, climate change, artificial intelligence, illegal migration, everything on the table there.
Let's discuss this now with our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Catherine, thanks for joining us. This is a significant moment for Keir Starmer. He's only been in the job 2 months, and it seems he's darted halfway around the world already.
Yes, indeed. He's already met the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, 5 times in less than 2 months. They get on very well. They're both fundamentally social Democrats. They're coming from a similar place politically. And yes, as Sir Keir Starmer said before the election, Labour wants to have closer ties with the European Union, and this is their first steps towards getting that. Now, he's been very clear, of course, people who voted Leave will not have forgotten that he campaigned vociferously for a second referendum after the Brexit vote. But he says now there is no going back. They won't go back to the customs union, to the single market, back into the EU. But he thinks that he can get a treaty with Germany, our second biggest trading partner and a real force to be reckoned with within Europe. And he thinks that he can get this treaty with them potentially by the end of the year. They're also hoping for a security pact that they think they can get even quicker than that. So Sir Keir Starmer talking about growth, thinking there's going to be cooperation that will be good for jobs here, talking about defence, a lot of talk about support for Ukraine in the press conference, also the situation in the Middle East. I have to say, in terms of details about what this actually means, pretty thin on the ground, an awful lot of warm words and sort of aspiration. But we don't really know what will be agreed and what price may be extracted for it, because, of course, Germany is not a free agent in many ways. It's a member of the European Union, so there's no way that they can strike any sort of trade deal with us. So I think what we're hearing and the reality of it down the line might be a little bit different.
Very interesting indeed. Thank you, Catherine. Catherine Forster there, GBNews political correspondent. Shall we head back to Germany now and speak to freelance journalist Rob Hyde? Rob, very interested to get a bit of an idea of the German perspective on this. What's in all of this for Mr. Olaf Scholz?
Well, an awful lot, really, because, I mean, today Keir Starmer came over and there was a lot of fanfare and the military reception and the guards, and then he went to Bellevue Schloss, and met the president. And as your political analyst rightly said, there was an awful lot of buzzwords and sort of energy, but very, very little detail. But I think in terms of what Olaf Scholz stands to gain from this is that he's doing really, really badly, to the extent that I actually wondered if he had reached out to Keir Starmer and asked him to come over and help him out. I mean, he's doing so badly within his own coalition government, which is a three-party government made up of his party, which is the Social Democrats, you've got the Greens, you've got the Free Liberals. And communication has been so bad between them that the German president actually stepped in 2 days ago and told them to get back to the workbench and basically to stop slagging each other off in public, because he said the citizens aren't well served by it. A week ago, Bild, which is the country's best-selling newspaper, actually had the headline, "Are they just staying in power because of their pensions?" with the idea of that it's pretty much over for the coalition government. And then Spiegel magazine had a leading psychologist who said that their communication had been cannibalistic. So it's been a really toxic environment which he's been working in within his own government. And then outside of the government, he's also doing really, really badly there. So you've got Friedrich Merz, which is the head of the conservative Christian Democratic Union. That was Angela Merkel's party. And now he's really been gunning for Scholz. He said there should be a national state of emergency declared on the issue of immigration. He's also said that more powers must be given to police to arrest criminal migrants, and also to deport. Authorities should have more power to deport them. And he said, and I quote, Scholz is losing control of his own country. So he's doing really, really badly. He's doing also badly on the political spectrum in terms of the left. So on Sunday, we've got the regional elections in the eastern federal state of Thuringia and also Saxony. And there you've got Sarah Wagenknecht, who's got her own party. She's from the radical left. She's now 3 times as popular as Olaf Scholz. So his party is doing so badly, it's not even guaranteed in Thuringia that he'll get 5%. And without 5%, his party can't even sit in the regional parliament.
He could lose all of his seats. It's extraordinary. This is, of course, pretty blatantly a deeply unpopular chancellor scrabbling around trying to find some prestige, trying to look a bit statesmanlike. But, of course, in the national polls, he's gone from first to third place. He's around 15%. And Germany's economic situation isn't particularly bright either. Just yesterday we learnt that in the last quarter the German economy actually contracted. It wasn't even standing still anymore. It's now shrinking in size. I mean, it does look perhaps a bit desperate. Or maybe this is a bad sign for Britain, that our only friends on Europe are the slowest growing or indeed shrinking G7 economy.
You're absolutely right with the examples you mentioned, and I've also just got some here. So today, the Frankfurter Rundschau, a newspaper, had the headline, Germany sinks further into economic misery. On Monday, the Munich-based think tank said, and I quote, the German economy is in a downward spiral, no growth, stagnation, and a sense of crisis. So for Keir Starmer to now be positioning himself with Olaf Scholz looks like a bit of an odd move, to be honest.
Yeah, when you put it like that, it certainly does. But Rob, of course, this all comes, a week after that absolutely horrific terror attack in Solingen in West Germany. How much of his unpopularity, particularly on the issue of immigration and illegal migration and asylum, is due to that, or has this long been the case?
This having just happened has definitely intensified it. And he also seemed to take quite a few days before he went there and turned up, which I don't think was the best move. But this is a pattern. This isn't an isolated event. I think I listed about 6 or 7 different examples on the last time I was on your show in terms of terror attacks, be it stabbings, ploughing a vehicle into crowds. And this has been just since 2016. So there's a massive frustration with a perceived lack of inaction on issues of tackling mass uncontrolled immigration. I mean, in the case of Solingen, which you mentioned, this murderer had continued to receive state benefits, so the German taxpayer's expense, even after he had been assigned to be deported. What he then did was he went into hiding for 6 months. He then reappeared, but because the official deadline to deport him had expired, the authorities didn't do anything. And I think even Olaf Scholz has now said he recognises that was a mistake. So he's under massive pressure now to toughen up, particularly... Sorry.
Just extraordinary, especially given that Keir Starmer's walking around saying we're going to sign this deal in 6 months' time. Could be that Olaf Scholz isn't the Chancellor of Germany in 6 months' time. Entirely possible. Rob, I'm afraid that we have run to time, but thank you so much for talking us through an absolutely fascinating perspective that I don't think we're hearing enough
really
across the media. The German side of this, right?
And we're facing the same problems. I mean, unfortunately, we've had failed asylum seekers who haven't been deported for one reason or another, who have gone on to commit heinous crimes in this country. It's something that's afflicting most Western countries, that's for sure. Olaf Scholz talking about toughening up deportation rules and things, but perhaps it's far too late for him. Rob Hyde, that was. Shall we return to the miracle from the motorway in Gloucestershire? Drivers on the A419 got a massive surprise yesterday.
Yes, a small plane crashed onto the highway next to an airfield. You can see in the pictures here, the pilot and passenger, both members of the Cotswold Gliding Club, narrowly escaped complete disaster as onlookers quickly arrived to help. One eyewitness told Gloucestershire Live that it looked as though the aircraft stalled and nosedived into the main road.
You don't see that every day, do you? Thankfully, no one appears to have been injured, but what a sight. What a sight.
I find it astonishing how they managed to survive that, frankly.
British countryside, eh? Anything could happen. There you go, yes. This is Good Afternoon Britain. We're on GB News. We've got lots more coming up, including the fact that puts this country to shame, really. There are now only 100 spaces, could be even fewer, left in male prisons across England and Wales. That's after a surge in arrests over the bank holiday weekend. What is the solution to this crisis?
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Is it time that we actually stop paying for royal security full stop? Is it right that taxpayers fund the security of everyone from Queen Camilla to Prince William? Because there's lots of commentary that perhaps Prince Andrew having his security removed is sort of a first step towards trying to get him out of Royal Lodge.
Well, I mean, that's what King Charles is hoping to try and do, is to sort of try and subtly strong-arm him out of Royal Lodge and into another property, which happens to be Harry and Meghan's old house, Frogmore Cottage. He's resisting, shall we say, any attempts by the King to actually go of his own accord. He says he signed a lease. He says the lease is cast iron, and that's where he's staying. So the King says, OK, you know, he's taken away his security. He believes he doesn't need to have this round-the-clock 24-hour protection. The only security, really, that the taxpayer should be paying for, the King believes, is just himself, Queen Camilla, and the Prince and Princess of Wales, because obviously they are the heirs.
But they are billionaires, aren't they? I mean, they could afford... Isn't Prince William a billionaire? He could afford his own security. Is there a legitimate question about whether or not the British taxpayer should be... But the only reason I ask is because, you know, you look at what Harry and Meghan are up to. They've just been to Colombia, presumably footed the bill themselves, or maybe Colombia did.
No, I think Colombia invited them.
OK.
They ended up, well, Prince Harry, shall I say, ended up costing us, the taxpayer, over $1 million in Home Office legal fees with that silly case that he brought, demanding that we do pay for police protection for him. So, I mean, he's not a good example. But do they deserve it? Yes, of course they do. It's the King, and they generate, I mean, 80% of the income that they generate goes back into our coffers, goes back into the Treasury.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 25 minutes past 2. And there are now fewer than 100 spaces left in prisons for men in England and Wales.
Yes, the system, already in the middle of an overcrowding crisis, is understood to be close to breaking point after increased strain, particularly over the bank holiday weekend.
Well, on Friday, magistrates were told to delay jailing criminals as the government hopes to make more than 500 spaces available in the coming weeks.
And this all comes as an 11-year-old child has been arrested over disorder in Middlesbrough during the UK riots. An 11-year-old child.
Well, joining us now is the crime and policing commentator, Danny Shaw. Danny, let's just start with that breaking news there. An 11-year-old child arrested for disorder amidst the riots. I'm not keeping tabs on every single arrest, but it sounds to me like this is one of the youngest.
I think it is the youngest. I think we've had 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds arrested. I mean, those are the arrests that we know about. Clearly, there may be others that we're not told about of young people. But we've certainly, that's certainly probably the youngest, if not the youngest. And it's very sad, isn't it, that someone of that young age is now most likely, if convicted or cautioned, will get a criminal record which will hang over them for many, many, many years. And will, you know, their reputation will be ever associated with the terrible scenes of disturbances that we saw across the country earlier this month.
Now, I don't know exactly what he's been accused of in terms of being involved in the violent riots, but do you think it's right to prosecute someone so young?
Well, you know, young people from the age of 10 onwards can be prosecuted, and some of them are prosecuted, particularly if the offences are serious. In some cases, they are kept out of the criminal justice system by means of diversionary activities. Community resolutions, which have been in the news recently, can be used. They can also obviously be subject to a youth caution. That still entails a criminal record. I mean, the justice system will try its hardest to keep them out of custody and to ensure that the penalty is appropriate for their age. But sometimes, if the offending is really serious, that cannot be avoided, even if someone is 11 years of age.
Now, I was led to believe that the age of criminal culpability was older than 11. Have I been misled?
10. It's 10 in England
10.
and Wales.
OK. That is fascinating. So were a 9-year-old to be participating in these riots, what would happen to that individual?
Well, a 9-year-old would be dealt with by social services in particular. There may be some input from police and probation as well, but they would not be prosecuted. There would be no prosecution. There will be no cautioning or anything like that. But you can be assured, and certainly we would hope, that the various agencies involved would want to understand why that young person had been caught up in you know, disorder, whether their parents were aware, and so on, and look into all those background factors. And you would hope that there would be a very close eye kept on that young person, but they would not be entering the criminal justice system at the age of 9.
Yes, well, it sounds like you agree with. In The Guardian today, I don't know if you saw, but the chair of the Youth Justice Board, he said that we should only prosecute children over the riots as a last resort. So it appears that you would agree with that. At least, you know, in this instance, we don't know what's happened, but as a general rule. Coming on to the prisons crisis we face, it is very alarming for people who are worried about safety on our streets that we have just so few prison spaces left. Do you believe that we're prioritising sometimes the wrong crimes? There's a horrific story from Bradford, a man who beat up essentially 3 women because he deemed that they were wearing inappropriate clothing, calling them prostitutes. He essentially beat them up in broad daylight at a petrol station. Now, he's got away with no prison time. Suspended sentence, £500 fine, a bit of rehabilitation and a bit of unpaid work. It's sometimes, as an outsider, it's hard to understand how certain decisions are made when it comes to prison sentences.
Well, as someone that spent, you know, 3 decades reporting the courts and reporting on the criminal justice system, one thing that it has taught me is that you have to know about the facts of the case before you comment on a case. And knowing about the facts of the case often means that you're in court and you hear all the arguments, or you hear the sentencing remarks. And I think it's very difficult to make conclusions based on, summaries or.
But in general, we're
headlines.
seeing the rise of more community resolutions rather than prison sentences for crimes, including knife attacks, including sexual assault. I mean, this has been reported quite broadly. So rather than comment on this specific case, could you comment on that? Is that a symptom of the lack of space in our prisons?
Well, I think there are two things, Emily. The first thing is there is a massive shortage of prison places. And that, sadly, is an indictment of the Conservative government for 14 years that introduced policies that led to longer sentences and more prison sentences in some cases, but didn't provide the prison places available. And that's a fact. They promised 20,000 places by the mid-2020s. They delivered only 6,000 new places. On your other question about community resolutions, it is true, and I reported on this yesterday for the Telegraph, it is true that there has been a big increase in the use of community resolutions, which are the lowest form of penalty that can be handed out by the police. They don't lead to a criminal record. You have to apologise. There might be some reparation involved, some acknowledgement that you've done something wrong. And they were intended to be used by the police as a simple form of resolving low-level crime on the streets. Very sensible option, but they have been used for sexual offences and for some, quite serious violent crimes, including possession of weapons. And that is really worrying. It really worries me that if you're caught with a weapon, you get essentially, a slap on the wrist, because the police ought to be recording if a young person or an older person is carrying a weapon so that they can keep tabs on that individual. And if they do it again, they know that you've got a repeat offender. And the same for sexual offences. Some of these offences are precursors to more serious sexual offending, such as exposure and voyeurism. And yet people are getting community resolution. So that does concern me, but I don't think it's being used as an alternative to imprisonment. I actually think it's being used as an alternative to police cautioning people where you do get a criminal record.
Well, Danny Shaw, thank you so much for talking us through that multitude of issues there. Crime and policing commentator, of course. Really appreciate your time.
Very interesting indeed. So instead of... Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain. Let us know what you think about the fact we have fewer than 100 spaces left in male prisons. Slightly alarming. But we're going to be live at Barnsley Magistrates Court after the break. 28-year-old Josh Greeley is given a suspended prison sentence after throwing items at Nigel Farage. Remember that during the general election campaign. But let's get the headlines with Sophia.
Tom, Emily, thank you. It's 2:33. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says a new UK-Germany treaty will be part of a wider reset with Europe. Sir Keir Starmer is in Germany to launch negotiations on a new bilateral treaty which hopes to boost business and increase joint action on illegal migration. Speaking during a joint news conference with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, he described it as a moment of opportunity to deepen links between the UK and Germany. More than 20,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally so far this year. The milestone was reached this morning as hundreds more made the journey in small boats from France. It's after 526 people arrived illegally in UK waters in 8 dinghies yesterday.
This treaty is part of a wider reset, grounded in a new spirit of cooperation, with our shared understanding that this will be developed at pace and that we hope to have agreed it by the end of the year. A Britain reconnected, resetting our relationship, rediscovering our common interests, delivering for working people. Britain and Germany already have an incredible relationship. 2 great countries brought closer together than ever before, the strongest strategic partners in Europe and on the world stage.
Sir Keir Starmer speaking there. Now, there are just 100 spaces left in male prisons across England and Wales, according to the Ministry of Justice. With reports, this is the closest the system has come to running out of places. It comes after the activation of Early Dawn, where defendants in active court cases are kept in police cells until standard prison spaces open up. Now, with hundreds more arrests from riots and Notting Hill carnival disorder over recent days and weeks, there are concerns prisons may run out of capacity. This comes as Cleveland police say an 11-year-old child has been arrested over disorder in Middlesbrough during the riots. Cleveland police said officers had detained a further 14 people in connection with the disorder on Sunday, the 4th of August. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sophia Wensler. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through the rest of the day, it will feel very warm across eastern areas and some central areas of England. Sunny spells for many of us, but a risk of some quite heavy showers where we see this weather front push in across parts of Scotland, northern England, Wales, southwestern England as well later on today. So risk of some showers for some of us, particularly across the north and west. The next batch of rain will spread into parts of western Scotland later on this afternoon as well as Northern Ireland. But ahead of this area should stay dry. The sunshine will be relatively hazy, but as I said, it is going to feel very warm. Warmest day of the week for many of us. Temperatures climbing as high as 29 degrees in the south and east, but for many areas in central eastern England in the mid to high 20s. A little bit fresher elsewhere, but still relatively warm across the east coast of Scotland, where it should stay dry through much of the day. Temperatures around 20 degrees or the high teens across the east. Further west, though, where we've got the heavier rain, potentially some quite thundery downpours, it will be cooler. We'll turn a little bit drier overnight across parts of Northern Ireland and into Wales and the southwest as this band of cloud slowly sinks further south and east into more central and eastern areas of England. So that brings a risk of the odd shower across eastern England, eastern coast of northern England, the east coast of Scotland this evening, but then things will turn more widely dry overnight tonight. We could see a few mist and fog patches developing across some southern counties and a few further showers spreading into the far north and west, but with clear and dry skies for most of us. It's going to be a cooler night tonight than last night. Quite widely, temperatures dipping down into single figures rurally. So a fresh but bright start to the day on Thursday. Quite a lot of sunshine around on Thursday. It will be a fresher feeling day through much of the day, but still pretty warm in the sunshine, particularly across more southern areas where we're away from the breeze, as there will be a few showers still affecting the west and northern areas of Scotland. And here temperatures a little below average, elsewhere just above. See you soon.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Blythe Bridge in Staffordshire on the westbound side of the Uttoxeter Road, the A50. Now still closed there between the Blythe Bridge roundabout and Blythe Bridge by the Creda roundabout. Severe delays at the scene of an earlier lorry fire. Anti-clock M25 at the Dartford Tunnel, still queuing after an earlier breakdown. Queues back towards Dartmouth at Junction 2. The Blackwall Tunnel, Poplar in London, the northbound side. Now there's a van fire, Greenwich towards Poplar, the northbound side of the Blackwall Tunnel therefore is closed. Queues back towards the Woolwich flyover. Both sides of Blackwall Lane are struggling too. And in Torquay and Devon, the Newton Road southbound from Woodland Road to Old Woods Hill is currently closed and queuing. That's at the scene there of a collision. And for now, that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Right, 2:39. Good afternoon, Britain. Martin is up next. Martin, hello. Martin, what's coming up on your show this afternoon? Hit us.
Well, we got a GB News exclusive today. Sadiq Khan breaks his silence. Isn't it astonishing how there's been 349 arrests, 61 coppers assaulted, 8 stabbings. The London Mayor, not a peep on his social media feeds or any statement whatsoever about it. He's been tweeting about climate change, about staying cool, about beavers in London. Finally, we asked him, what's your position on the violence in Notting Hill? And he's given us a statement. Tune in for that astonishing full admission. We had to force it out of him, but he's finally spoken. Ooh. And we're in Berlin for a surrender, are we? Who do you think you're kidding, Mr. Starmer? We know your game. They said in 2018, no cherries, no cherry picking on your cake. Well, that's precisely what Sir Keir Starmer is doing. First Berlin, next Paris. I'm telling you, next it'll be Brussels. This is the road to rejoin. We've got to keep all eyes on that one. Next up, there's another protest this afternoon in Aldershot. They've been going very, very peacefully. The Labour MP, the media, have been accusing the far right of being shipped in, despite the fact it's been peacefully organised by locals. I'm there live today talking to a local man who organised this, saying it's the lefties who are being shipped in from Brighton, from London, Corbynistas, antagonising situation on the ground. All that 3 till 6.
Pat, show Martin. We'll be tuning in. Look forward to seeing you there from 3.
Oh, I wonder what the London... See you. I wonder what the London Mayor's response to what's happened at Notting Hill Carnival will be. It is interesting when you look at his social media. It's mostly about things like climate change. There's something about a new statue to commemorate lives lost in the transatlantic slave trade.
That trade that we stopped.
Yeah, there's something about keeping cool in London. And, of course, a post about how fantastic the carnival was. There is a non-related to the Notting Hill Carnival, though. His latest tweet from Steve Khan is about how he's clamping down on violent crime in the city. Now, that came out about 3 hours ago on his social media page, which is interesting. Doesn't reference, recent...
Doesn't reference the 63 emergency workers who were injured at the carnival.
Yeah, it almost doesn't fit his narrative or the narrative that he wishes to project for London. It's very interesting. But we all note it, though, don't we? We all note the silence on things like this.
You'd think that in a situation on any day, whatever the event, or even if there were lots of different events, if 63 emergency workers were injured on one day, you'd comment about it. You're responsible for the Metropolitan Police. If 50 police officers receive injuries, you should speak to that.
Yes, at the moment, he's just tweeted 1 minute ago a little heart emoji saying, taking polluting cars off our road. Heart emoji, enabling walking and cycling. Heart emoji, reduce junk food ads on public transport. Oh, well, there you go. There you go.
Real
Less junk food. Fewer junk food ads on your commute to work.
By junk food, what they mean is hummus. Which counts as the high in fat, sugar and salt. I mean,
what about...
You'd be at pesto is another one that they've banned from the tube adverts. Because they're high in fat, sugar and salt. Because it turns out there isn't a legal definition of junk food, and if you try and make a definition, you end up banning a carbonara.
Yeah, and what about all the women and girls who feel increasingly unsafe on the streets in London? Nothing to say about that. Anyway, how do you feel about a bug Mac?
Well, the UK government is reportedly looking to promote insect-based foods and meat alternatives to lessen agriculture's environmental impact.
Yes, researchers at a news centre will work on making these protein sources more appealing.
Goodness me, well, how do you do that? We're joined by the Senior Corporate Project Manager at People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, Dr. Carries Bennett. Are bugs animals?
Thanks so much for having me on. I think it's really fantastic that this new Research Innovation Centre is going to promote plant-based foods, but it shouldn't be promoting eating crickets, worms and other insects because they are sentient animals and there's increasing scientific knowledge that they do feel pain. So really we should stop trying to eat our way through the animal kingdom and leave insects off our plate, as well as cows, pigs and chickens, because it's absolutely devastating the environment and our health.
It seems like the jury's out, though, a bit on how sentient bugs are. It seems there are conflicting studies into this. So we should just, go be safe and treat them as sentient animals, you think?
Well, the best thing to do is really just try and avoid eating other sentient beings. There's been new studies that show that bees feel pain. We know they're under threat. And just imagine how many trillions of insects would be needed to feed people's desire for meat. There's already billions of cows, chickens and pigs that are killed. And it's completely unsustainable. The executive director of the Insect Institute has said that eating insects is not going to save the planet. His research has found it's actually more expensive, it's unsustainable, and it's a completely inefficient way of farming. So really, we can just choose solutions that already exist, which is plant-based protein and vegan food. It's available in all the supermarkets and so many restaurants and coffee shops now.
Doesn't taste great,
and it saves animals from suffering.
Here's what I'm interested to get the perspective of sort of a vegan perspective on, really. lab-grown meat. It's becoming more of a thing. At the moment, it's not cheaper than, farmed meat, so we're not seeing it everywhere. But the price is coming down, and probably within the next decade, it's going to become a real viable option for people, where actual real meat is grown, but without a sentient being attached to it, without the brain, just the meat. Would you be open to eating a lab-grown burger?
It's not something that I'd personally eat, having been a vegan for many decades, but I think it's so interesting. It is a great opportunity for millions of people out there. And if it's going to exactly replicate meat and prevent chickens from having their throats slit, from pigs having their testicles cut off without anaesthetic, and from ducks living in huge sheds where they never see daylight, let alone swim in ponds, I think it's a really interesting development and a really exciting thing that can happen. We don't need to eat other animals.
Tom's very excited.
Because I like eating beef. I like eating chicken. But I mean, I can also sort of empathise a bit with this argument that I think probably the way that chickens are kept in sort of big battery farms is cruel. But I don't think that people are going to make the switch until there's a viable alternative. And I'm not sure that plant alternatives are there, but it could be. It could be that we do see a massive societal shift when this lab-grown stuff.
We could, Tom. Anyway, we're going to have to leave it there. Dr. Caris Bennett, thank you very much. You're from Peter. I mean, you'd have to go to Thailand and tell people they can't have their delicacy. They eat worms and crickets and... maybe not worms. Crickets, grasshoppers. Oh, and a variety of worms. Yes, I might try those next time I'm in Thailand. Yeah. First time I'm in Thailand.
I had some snails last month.
Oh, well, there you go. That's a lovely French delicacy.
Yeah, I had them in Spain, though.
Nice garlicky, bit of parsley, delicious.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically just eating garlic, aren't you? I imagine that's what a lot of these insects are, actually.
Frogs next year. Anyway, lots more coming up on today's show. GB News can exclusively reveal that more than 20,000 migrants have now crossed the English Channel illegally this year. Experts saying last year's figure will easily be passed.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Did you know several Paralympic GB track and field athletes are aiming to go for gold this summer in Paris? So aside from pure talent, a British firm has incorporated, get this, space technology in the materials of running clothes to help athletes perform at their ultimate capacity. I'm not sure if I believe this, but we'll find out in a sec. Trailblazing scientists, engineers and designers at British firm Rion Labs have taken an idea first used in a NASA project, and they've now developed it for over 15 years at Imperial College in London.
First of all, please can you explain to us a bit more about how and what this incredible technology is?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, our founder, Dr. Dan Plant, spent many years developing these kind of dynamic materials. That means they behave in what's called non-Newtonic way. So they don't follow the rules. Effectively, they can change their behavior depending on kind of stress or stretch you apply to it. So what you get on an athlete level, if you imagine you have a garment, it's supercharged. It's such that the garment changes its support depending on your movement or your activity or the speed at which you run.
So you're saying that it generates, what, more sort of kinetic energy, is that right?
Not quite. It makes you effectively make more out of your own energy. Spot the athletes with the wavy curves and stripes, you'll see that. So that's super polymer we have in combination with these stripes that are kind of built around the way your muscles moves.
You said the difference between first and fourth place is a fraction of a percent.
Yeah, that's the very main difference it makes. So even if you manage to kind of make more of your own energy and improve your performance by 1%, that's the difference between podium and non-podium.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 3. Now, today, a milestone has been passed. We can exclusively reveal that more than 20,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel illegally so far this year.
Yes, and the milestone was reached this morning as hundreds more made the journey in small boats. To break this down is our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Break down these figures for us then, 20,000.
Yes, that milestone was crossed mid-morning when the first of 9 boats came across the English Channel, and that has now taken us for today alone to 613 migrants who crossed the English Channel illegally, and that followed 526 who crossed the English Channel in 8 small boats yesterday. All in all, it's about 20,400, just under, for the year so far. At a time, of course, when the new Labour government has taken over and promised to clamp down on the people smugglers and stop the trade in people across the English Channel. But so far, there's been no let-up, no slowdown in the numbers coming across the English Channel. And in fact, we're on course to beat last year's total easily of 29,000.
It's fascinating when we talk about these numbers and we talk in the context of Keir Starmer going over to Berlin to talk to Mr. Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, about this, amongst other issues. Germany this year is estimated to have 300,000 illegal migrant crossings into its borders. Does Keir Starmer have anything to learn from Olaf Scholz?
Not particularly. They are grappling with a real and serious problem in terms of illegal migration, in terms of asylum seekers. Of course, we had that terrible terrorist attack that took place in Germany over the weekend that has been attributed to an asylum seeker from Syria. So they have real concerns, real worries in their population too. And generally, right across mainland Europe, over their porous borders from southern Europe, where many thousands of migrants are coming across the Mediterranean from North Africa, to the borders in Eastern Europe, where they're spilling across into Poland and through Bulgaria and Hungary to get into the more affluent countries, Germany or France, and of course many, as we know, trying to get to the shores of northern France to get to the UK.
Yes, it's not just our leaders who appear impotent in the face of this challenge. Thank you very much, Mark White, our Home and Security editor. That's it. The end of the show.
Thank you indeed for watching. Do join us again tomorrow. And of course, don't go anywhere at all, because Martin Daubney is up next with some pretty astonishing exclusives on that Notting Hill Carnival. Don't go anywhere.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through the end of this week, it will be more widely settled. Still some cooler nights, though, but still feeling quite warm in the day. However, through the rest of this evening, we've still got some wet weather to come for some north and western areas. That will push into the south and east due to this weather front moving south and eastwards throughout this evening. So bringing some showery outbreaks of rain to the likes of northeastern England, perhaps the odd shower across eastern areas of England as well. But that should generally clear away as the night goes on. So a clear and dry night to come once that rain does clear, and we could see some mist and fog developing across more southern counties. So a fresher night with clearer skies, but that will make for a brighter start to Thursday. So plenty of sunshine, particularly across eastern and southern areas of the UK. The north and west will see some heavier showers pushing in from western Scotland first thing. So a wet start for western areas of Scotland, parts of the Highlands, the Western Isles. Temperatures only around 12 or 11 degrees first thing. More in the way of sunshine across parts of Northern Ireland, and southern areas of Scotland staying largely dry. Now we could see the odd shower across parts of Wales, southwest England, northwest England in fact, but many central and eastern areas will be very much dry through the morning and actually through much of tomorrow. It's looking like a fairly fine day. Light winds for much of England and Wales. It will feel quite pleasant in the sunshine, but the air is going to be fresher tomorrow, so we'll lose that humid feel that we have had today. So temperatures will be a little bit lower tomorrow compared to today, just in the lower 20s, 23 or 24 at best in the south and east, closer to those higher teens further north. Well, we've got a fairly brisk breeze in the north. It will stay quite fresh well into the evening as well. Potentially some quite strong winds affecting the Northern Isles through Thursday evening, but the showers should move away to the north and east through Thursday, leaving a fine day quite widely through Friday and Saturday as well. A risk of showers arrives in the south from Sunday. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could win an incredible £30,000 in cash, and you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
Oh, I can't believe this.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, you shocked me. I never won a penny in my life.
If I was there, I'd buy you a drink.
Get your entry in now for another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash. Text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
I'm not saying I don't want to be a mum, and I'm not saying I don't want to work, but it's definitely not easy.
It's just really tough for us mums, you know. Our job's never done, our work is never finished, and I think it's this movement, the real out-of-office movement, is something that just really resonates with me, and I think we should all talk more about how much work we do. I think a woman's work is never done, but I just think we all feel guilty. We have that mum guilt, you know. If you're working and being successful, you wish you were at home with the kids, and if you're at home, you're thinking, am I doing enough work?
Yeah, and of course the cost of childcare in this country means that a lot of families just frankly make that decision to have one of the parents stay at home, usually the mum, and they're just being squeezed out of the economy, and that's not good either.
Once you've done your job as a working mum, you come home and you're doing another 8 hours on top of it.
Mothers have a tendency, definitely historically, just to crack on with it. It's just something that they are expected to do, that they do without moaning, and now it's like...
Are we getting to a stage where go down that well? In my experience, I have had someone say to me, "Well, if you can't handle it, why do you have kids?" Oh, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely, and yeah, exactly that. We just need to talk about it, and I think it's healthy, and I think that's the main thing now, that we should be brave enough to be able to say, do you know what? Sometimes it's difficult, but I'm really proud to be a working mum, and I tell my daughters that I work really, really hard, and it's a good work ethic for them, you know, and that's what this campaign's all about.
Is there some resistance still, do you think, from some parts of society?
I do think there's resistance, and that's what this is about, is to try and get people talking about the fact that it has been awkward in the past, and some people don't understand a working mum's life, and that's why we need to try and talk about it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. Hope you're having a corking day. Let's make it even better. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, in 2018, the European Union's Donald Tusk warned us there would be no post-Brexit cherry-picking. But that hasn't stopped Prime Minister Keir Starmer heading to Berlin, looking to reset our relationship with Germany. Now, with the Prime Minister's next stop Paris, is it then Brussels? And is this all part of Starmer's grand plan to cosy up to the EU and begin the long road to rejoining? Next up, some 500 illegal immigrants came ashore yesterday, taking the grim tally now to over 20,000 this year. And that's more than 6,000 since the Labour Party came into power. Now, that's a small town the size of Buxton or Harwich, and it's rising. Labour said they smashed the gangs. It appears the gangs didn't get the memo.